Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? It's Thursday afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, on a Thursday afternoon, on a Thursday afternoon. Anybody see this? This is, I ran into my car door and I got a big scrape across my forehead. Blood everywhere. It was a mess. I don't know why I'm telling everybody that. Let me just make sure my feed is up and running here. Boop. There we go. Today we have a wonderful guest on that we have been trying to get on for some time. We had them scheduled maybe about a month back, and there was a conflict, and they were able to join us today. That is the incomparable. I don't know. Is that a good word? Incomparable. I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for. The amazing, the talented Suzy Ultman is going to be joining us. I see that she has sent a request. Just a reminder that at the end of, hopefully by tomorrow night, I'm guessing, I'll try to post this up to YouTube so people can watch this there as well. And we're going to be taking a few weeks off. I'm going to be doing some traveling overseas to Ireland. And so I will not be back until sort of mid-July. But we have a list of folks that are coming, and I will announce those as we get a little bit closer. So, other than that, I'm going to put in the Ask Us Anything, and I will let in our special guest. Let me bippity boop boop boop. Ask us anything. And there we go. Post that, and I'm going to pin that real quick. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let our guest in, and we will get going. It says go live. I thought I hit it. Let's try this again. Let's see. Let's try that again. Accept. There we go. Hey!
We did it.
We did it. I don't know. It stalled out for a second. I was like sitting there thinking. I was like, oh no, is it not going to work? Thank you for joining us today on a wonderful, although not where we are, Thursday afternoon. Where are you located again? Remind me.
I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So I would
are
say
you under the dome?
East Midwest. Of heat?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we're feeling it.
Yeah, it's bad. I'm down in a basement and it's cooler than the rest of our house, and I'm still like hot right now. It's just it's hitting us hard.
I like to sweat, but my computer. So I'll go outside for like 15 or 20 minutes to work, but I worry about the computer sweating. I'm like, I don't know what they're rated for to be outside, but I actually do like to sit out.
That is what just happened? Uh-oh. I'm here. Suzy must have dropped off for a second. Let me see. Because it says was unable to join the feed, and now we got that stalled out, and it's just me, it looks like. Let me try letting Suzy in again real quick and see if it's just a fluke. Let's cross our fingers. Okay. I don't know what that was.
It bumped me out.
Yeah. On my end, like on the feed to everybody, it was just me. But then on my end, it was you just stuck mid-frame, and I was like, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I'm not a heat person. This is disgusting to me.
Yeah.
I want it in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and I'm like, I am in the spot. So I'm looking forward to Ireland, which is in that 60s range right now. Like, that's going to be so wonderful.
That'll be perfect.
Beyond the beauty, just the temperature alone.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful. So real quick, for those who are watching and tuning in who do not know who you are, which they should be ashamed if that's true, can you let people know who you are and what you do?
So I'm an artist, illustrator, storyteller. I think as I get deeper into my career, because I've been doing this, I've been a creative professional for like 30 years, but illustrating for about 15. I think it's more just about like storytelling in any way, shape, or form that I can. I really like being able to like really chew on like a really good story and tell it, whether it's through product design or through children's books. I would say my focus is our kids.
Yep.
and helping them navigate, giving them tools to help navigate the world, learn about themselves, connect with each other, connect with adults around them, help adults connect with kids. So all of that is
When
really
you when when you say storytelling, you say product. I was going to ask you right when you said the storytelling on everything. I was like, what about products? But I imagine there is sort of a storytelling thing there. It's oftentimes when people think of that, it is just like it's purely a sales or marketing thing, and
so
not necessarily
yeah. I've
story.
had the pleasure of kind of going into it from the opposite direction. But I started working with my Dutch client about 10 years ago, and she needed some toys, and she was really open to my ideas. So I came up with these, I came up with a couple sets that sort of started my career in product design. And they were like these little worlds that are inside my head. So there's like a whole story behind everybody. And then and themes that I'm always working with in my own life, whether it's like home and what home means for me or for my family, for kids. And so like the Suzy City are all different buildings from places that I've lived. And this idea that wherever you go, you're bringing a piece of yourself there, and you're also learning from other people. So there is like a whole story there, but because I don't, yeah, I haven't gone the opposite direction yet. I mean, I'm hopeful that one day I'll have like a book that then spins off some toys, but
Yeah.
it's always, my products always contain a lot of story in them. And I find a lot of joy at expressing myself through products, through something that has like dimensionality and interactivity. And when you think of like how people are going to use it, and kids at heart and adults, like how does it end up, how does it create the story in their lives once they get their hands on it. I like to create products for kids that are open play, so there aren't a lot of instructions, kind of if you think like Lego, like they can break, like you're creating
Yeah.
something, like they're meeting together somehow, where you create something that gives them the tools to like go off and be creative, imaginative, create their own stories.
It's it's interesting because it makes me feel like very naive because I never really thought about it from that point of view, partially because I'm like the design background in me always goes like, okay, you're trying to solve a problem. And
Yeah.
I never like when it comes to like, it's funny because when it comes to visuals, most of the time I'm like, yeah, story, narrative, etc. But when it hits that three-dimensional thing, my
Yeah.
brain starts to go like, oh, it's not about, especially if it's product, it's like it's the story I always thought would take sort of second, would ride shotgun, not necessarily be driving the bus. But I actually think that it's very like, that's my own, uh, again, my own naivete to sort of think like, oh, story doesn't play that major part in it, but truly it does. I just never really thought about it like that. And so that's really sort of fascinating to me, the idea of like focusing on that and almost directing the product to serve the purpose of the story
Yeah.
versus the other way around.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up really fascinated with like building my own dioramas. Like I loved getting a shoebox and just making like little Play-Doh figures. And I watched a lot of like Muppets and Croft. Do you know the Croft Brothers stuff? Like Lidsville and HR Puffin
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like those worlds are like they're like, it's very, I mean, in the very image, like very bright and like character driven, but also like there's a dimensionality to it. Like you're going into a world. And as a kid, I just like love that feeling of going into a world, and I would build my own world. So I think that's part of the aesthetic I have. I'll just actually have this. I'll pull this up really quickly because it's the most recent book that I did, but the friendship
Yep.
carousel. So like I had an idea for like friendship and the carousel, but then was able to execute that the whole book opens and like you tie it over here, and so you can actually the user can spin it, they can look at it, you can read it as a traditional book, you can put it on the shelf, you can spin it, you can play with it. So my brain is always in that space of like how can you make it a more engaging experience, how can you get like deeper into that like playful space and interactive space.
The I see there's already questions popping up, and I want to make sure that we will get to those questions, everybody. I want to make sure that we get into actually making here too. But now you had mentioned we had chatted just previously for everybody. This I'm not going to fake it and be like, this is the first time I ever talked to you. No, we talked literally seconds before this started. But you have a plan to make something today.
Yeah.
and my wife also tries to keep track of what people use
Okay,
down to
cool.
like tools. And I know you said that you might be cutting some stuff out. Like I have this like pair of Fiskars shears. Like you got some old scissors. Not old. Those are nice scissors.
These guys. What is it?
I can't.
Um,
Alec.
yeah,
Alec.
it's a
Yeah.
Japanese brand. These are like the best scissors in the world for cutting paper, and they're not super expensive. They're just fantastic.
And then are there other material? I mean, you mentioned you had a bunch of stuff around,
Okay.
and so do I. Like there's just stuff
Favorite
everywhere. But it's
favorite eraser
okay.
ever. I mean, I'm very picky about pencils, erasers, pens, like anything that my hand's touching. So these, my favorite pencil, and
The Blackwing.
yeah. And then for pens, I love like a dual brush. I like thicker, and then like super, super fine. So
Okay. So
any sort of like micro
microns.
pen. And then for colored pencils, I use a ton of colored pencils. I just, it's so funny when I look at it, I'm like, oh, there's my palette. Sometimes I try to throw in different colors to change up the palette, but I'm so like, so I just have a whole colored pencils from everywhere. And
Is there a brand you prefer, or is it just
I really like the Blackwing as well. But it's funny, I get colored pencils from all over the place, and from the kids and from clients. So I mean, I do think like the Prismacolors are fantastic, but then I've got some of my Uli stuff in here that do really nicely. I tend to when I'm working so I draw by hand, and then for final for clients, I work in the computer. So when I'm drawing by hand, I just really like I work pretty quickly, and I want to enjoy the process. So I'm not super picky about those materials, because it's not to be hung on the wall. It's really where I get to just play and let it, like I haven't tried Crayola crayons, but I probably really enjoy that. If it's something that it needs to be executed, then I would go with something like the Blackwing color pencils. But for fun, for stuff like this, I use just whatever. If I had my gouache out, then that's like, I definitely use really cheap watercolors but expensive gouache. So I balance it that way, because if I really want like a nice, like it to feel like the really nice gouache brands, like you can feel like how nice the paint is. But watercolor, I just like whatever the kids had from laying around, I'll just use it and play with it.
There are certain materials, like there's certain colored pencils that I bought where I'm like, I could just get away with cheap stuff, but then they just don't go down right. But there's like, yeah, it's like real cheap stuff. Every once in a while it's like perfect, and sometimes it's awful, and you have to buy it and try it to find out.
Yeah.
But then you have, when you mentioned like using your favorite thing, I was like, I'm working with, like, this is my favorite colored pencil right now.
I have one like that too.
I forget, it's a coral or something like that. It's down to almost losing the name. It's a Prismacolor, but I need to go buy another one. But it's this tiny little thing, and I use it almost on every piece. And then I have colored pencils I've never touched that are sitting here because they're just like a color I don't ever want to touch.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. I think I've lost it finally. I had a red one just like that, Prismacolor, and I tried to replace it, and it's weird. I don't know if it's because it had gotten so old that like the color, like something happened with the pigment, but I cannot find the same red. It's like this nice, warm, deep red. I tried to replace it with the exact same color, and it's not the same. It's the exact same.
Where I buy mine, I can go buy individual colors. The problem is they only have like, it's this lovely case of all these spots for colors, and then it's got like 5 colors in the thing, and that's it, because everybody's out all the best ones. It's like trying to hunt this one down. It's gonna be a nightmare, but I will get it. And I don't want to mail it because they'll probably get broken in the mail, and then every time I try to sharpen it, it's gonna be a mess. Can
I say something really quickly?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say when I tend to be like, when I give myself like the gift of sitting down and doodling or drawing, I try to actually not make it that precious, because I feel like everything else I do has to be so well executed. That's why I'm just kind of like, got my pencils, got my paper, I just really want to play. And that's for me where most of the magic happens. Everybody's like a little bit different. When you said you're going to do like a whole piece, I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine.
But that's play. like play to me is the challenge of like not knowing where it's going 100%.
Mm-hmm.
As you're going along, having to like solve problems.
Yeah.
To me, that is the play part. And so like getting to a finished product, I get to a thing where like I'm using color and things of the sort, but it's the real, I mean, it's the same thing. Like when you're playing, it's you're discovering, and you're sometimes discovering wonderful things, but you're also discovering things you have to fix.
Right.
And so like for me, that's the go-to of, it doesn't have to be I actually don't really doodle. I don't spend a lot of time in a sketchbook ever. I doodle with material. And to me, if I'm doing with material, I might as well go to film, if that makes any sense. But when I look at it, it looks like a doodle to me, but a lot of people might say it's a finished piece.
Right.
But it's a weird, like, that's just the way that I operate. And I'm always jealous of the people who like can fill up a sketchbook, because that's not me whatsoever.
No, that's not me either. Yeah. I have like Post-its. I have like a sketchbook that's full of Post-its, because I'll like do something on a Post-it and stick it in a sketchbook, and I've got all my little cutouts. And,
sketchbook that I rip pages out of. Nothing stays in the sketchbook ever, and it's just because that's the type of paper that's nice. That's it.
Yeah.
So why don't we switch to our downshoots, and then we can just start talking. And I know that there were lots of questions, and a lot of them were right off the bat about sort of balancing your career, and especially on the business side.
Yeah.
But why don't we switch cameras, and we'll start into that as we go.
You'll let me know if this works.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
This is the unfair advantage that I have. Is there a way to flip your camera the 180?
Oh boy.
It's upside down on screen right now. That's the only reason why I say it.
So you're seeing upside down. Let me
I
think.
So you don't have to move, but the camera, if it can just turn 180, that would solve it.
Taking everyone for a little ride here. Yeah. Okay.
Whoa.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. Cool. We'll see how this all works out.
When you were turning it, it had this cool like effect where the stage that you were on or whatnot wasn't moving, but stuff around it was. It was
cool.
Mesmerizing. So let's jump into sort of career and sort of like, because I do think of you as artist is the headline that's there, but then the byline that's underneath it is sort of like business person is like, I look at your work and think about how like diverse and how even though it's in a sort of a niche market of the kid side of things, it is very diverse. You have products, you have just the plethora of things that come out of your studio on a regular basis is really inspiring. And I'm
thank you.
Sort of, how do you manage all of that? How do you sort of create the avenue that you can walk down that allows that kind of work to happen?
So that's a really good question. It's definitely something I'm always looking at, and it's not, can you see what I'm doing? Sorry, I'm trying to, am I in? Okay, cool.
You might need to zoom out. If you're on your phone, if you just pinch down a little bit on your section of it, it might zoom the camera a little bit out, or pan it out rather, so we can see a little bit wider section.
Oh wait, how do I do that? I'm not sure I know how to do that. Let me try. I have one more thing I can try.
On the screen, if you literally just pinch, it should zoom in and out.
Okay, wait, let me see.
And just we're sort of seeing the top of your hands versus.
I feel very
Oh, you have it facing the other way. That's okay. I get it.
But I do have like a little thing I can boost it up on. Yeah. So I'll talk as I did. So in terms of my how I do that. So I've had, I don't think any of us does anything by ourselves. It's always helpful to have support in a group team effort. So I would say that, is that better?
Let me hold on one second. Let me get up there. Can you move your pad of paper up a little bit, or forward a little bit?
Oh, this way?
Yes.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That should be good.
Perfect. So my career started off, my illustration career, I was pretty fortunate because I hooked up with my then agent, and that really helped me start to understand the business. Having an agent, it not only opened doors for me, but I got to start understanding like illustration contracts and what was out there. Before that, I was a graphic designer for many years, so I had a lot of experience communicating my work visually, which was also a huge asset for any graphic designers out there. It's a very big asset to be able to know how to present, not just for clients, but like also on social media and all those things. Sorry, it's hard to talk and draw at the same time. So that was like my training camp was probably my years as a graphic designer, working in small businesses, corporations, all those things, knowing how to talk to clients, and then hooked up with my agent about 13, 14 years ago and started learning about the illustration industry. And pretty quickly into the whole thing, I feel like kind of becoming my own brand. I definitely had a focus on what I wanted to be doing, and that drove me looking for other people that were doing what I was doing. So I learned from them. I'd watch what they would do, and if I could, like, see if I could take someone out for a coffee, whether like virtual or in person, and pick their brain. So learning from other people. And then right before COVID, that's when I opened my e-commerce site, and that was definitely a game changer, because it not only allowed me to present a lot of work that I'd made in one place, but also encouraged me to start creating my own product. And then we all know what happened during COVID. Like, everything just sort of changed for everybody. So I think
I like the phrasing, we all know what happened. Like, you don't even have to go like super deep into it.
Yeah, I think we were all switching gears. Like, it felt like every 2 weeks I had to just kind of be like, okay, well, what am I doing for this week? Am I going to, collaborate with somebody and just put out a free printable or try Zoom classes? I was just trying a lot of things. And I guess I had the good fortune of my husband being at home. So he started helping me with Zoom classes because he was working from home too. So at this point I didn't have an agent. But he was helping me with things, figure stuff out as he was home. Can you still see what I'm doing? Sorry, I keep pulling back and forth.
Yep.
Okay. So he was helping me at home. And then I also reached out to somebody who I had known who was doing some coaching to get some help on the marketing side of things. Because as a creative, for me, it's like when I'm so busy and deep in creative and helping clients and figuring out what's next that I want to make, it just was overload having to do the marketing as well. So she wasn't really somebody that was doing marketing for me, but she had a really great understanding of the kids world and marketing, and helped me develop my newsletters and a social media calendar and just some basic organizational tools. So that really helped. And then eventually I did get an agent who's newer to me, and that's Kathleen. And she is a licensing agent, which was new for me because I had been with an artist agent. And so
that's who you're with now?
Correct.
Okay.
And
what's the name of the agency again?
It's the current company.
Okay.
And
thank you.
And so she was able to look at me more as a brand and say, like, okay, what are we going to do? What do you want to do? What do I think you can do? Like, what are the markets that you're missing? Where are the ones that we want to break into, and come up with a plan. So that's been huge. That's just been for the past couple of years, but it's been a game changer to have somebody outside of myself that's looking at all that. I felt like inside of myself, like I knew that was all a possibility. I just couldn't see it all from inside my own head. So that's been great. And then, so she's like part of my team. I would say my family's part of my team. My son is now cooking dinner once a week, so I got to give him props.
How old is he?
He's older.
Oh.
He's 23. But he's living at home, and like that's huge. Like we talked to him about kind of like a change of things while he's here and done with school, and how he could be helping out, because all of that stuff, like as a mom who's encouraging my kids to move forward and parenting young adults, and then as a creative and a partner, it's like I have to be looking at all those things. So in terms of the products that are coming out all the time, I really, really appreciate what you said, that there's a lot coming out, and it's constant. Like the building of relationships are really important. Building relationships with people that you like working with and that you want to continue working with. Filling your life with people that collaborate well with you, and knowing when to walk away from other things that aren't working.
Yeah.
Even if it's hard and hurts sometimes, because, maybe it's something you really had your mindset on, or it was a client you really thought could like be like that game changer that makes like all the dreams come true. Sometimes things just don't work out the way you think they're going to in the moment, but that doesn't mean they won't work out some other time down the road.
Gotcha.
So knowing like also when to walk away from certain things, like
You,
when, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you
That was
feel
a lot.
like that is a, like, obviously knowing when there is a gamble in your life, in the sense of like, I need to walk away from this, or I need to change my path, or whatever, however you see that to be, the mindset, is that something that is easy for you? Is that something like, is it pretty clear in your vision, like, hey, this is the time to make that shift? Or is that something that you have to weigh for months and months, kind of thing? And the reason I ask in particular is, like, I've been through situations like that where, like, dropping an agent or things, like, there's such a risk, and it is very hard to sort of give yourself the leeway to go, yeah, it's okay to make a mistake, especially if you're already in your career for a ways. And I'm wondering sort of like what that shift, or what those kind of like decisions look like from your end.
Yeah, that's, again, a really good question. So I think they all take consideration and conversation, like inside of my own head, and then with people that I really trust. And some of them some of them are faster than others. Like sometimes it happens. It's like really obvious and really quick.
Yeah.
Like I have a meeting with somebody that I thought was going to be that client that I really wanted to work with, and I can just tell from the meeting, like, it's not a good fit. And it's better to recognize that, sooner than later, because once you get too deep into things, it gets harder to walk away. But something a little more recently, and maybe this like will answer the question more fully for people that are making those choices. It's so funny. I think a lot of us do this with like the COVID. I track everything by COVID.
Yep.
Like, okay, so when I was in lockdown, I was having these thoughts. I would say, and I think I'm going on 4 or 5 years now since I started this process. But during COVID, when I had some like really nice time to sit down and think about things and look on what was going around the world around me, I really was thinking about the children's world and kind of the space that I was taking up in it. And that if I was going to be continuing to work in that space, and making things for a generation of kids that are growing up in a world that doesn't have as many resources, right? Our planet's like losing resources. So if I'm going to make stuff, like what does that look like if I'm going to be using resources to make things? So to me, what it looked like was I need to be telling stories that are as close to me as possible, so that there's a reason for me doing that story. So I decided about that time to start looking at my Jewish culture, because I realized it was something I hadn't really talked about, and it would be like there's some great stories there that I hadn't told yet. So I had a lot of conversations with my husband about it, like what that would look like for me, like why hadn't I talked about it before, What would it mean talking about in the future? Like, who's the audience for it? Will there be an audience? Will people be into it? Will my client base be into it? All that stuff. Um, so I started like figuring out first in my own home, like what those conversations were. And again, like most importantly, like why hadn't I talked about it previous to 5 years ago? And so that I felt like I knew the story inside of myself. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah,
I
no,
knew
duh.
my,
I mean,
I need to know my, I need to know my own story first because it was sort of risky because it was something, it felt risky for me because it was something I hadn't talked about before and it was getting very specific. And then when I started looking for a new agent, when they asked me if I had any book ideas, I would talk about the ideas I had for this Jewish children's book series. And see like what kind of response I got. And there were a lot of people that had a very lukewarm response or didn't really know how to respond to it. And then when I talked to Kathleen, she like totally got it and was into it.
do you get
And
a sense why they had like? Do you think it was just?
um,
I mean, I
you know,
I can
there's like a
imagine.
lot.
Oh, go
I,
ahead. Go ahead.
I think there can be a lot of reasons. I mean, some of it is that it's like I think, it's not as marketable as something if I'm like, hey, I'm going to talk about friendship or it's much more specific
Yeah.
content. And if you don't see the need for it in the market or know how to market it, it can seem just like, like a lot of work, right? Because I mean, that's one way I think, to look at it is that people just wouldn't know. Some people didn't know what to do with it. Because it's a smaller audience and um yeah, I think maybe that would be part of it. There might be some other things too, but I'll say I think that's generally what it was, is they just didn't understand the need for it.
I mean, I could also understand too that potentially there's the like not knowing. I mean, the market side of it. Like, how do you market something like that in a world wherein there's this push towards just like cute and not necessarily that it doesn't say anything, but oftentimes like when something has a point or has a message behind it, there can be this like uh, people being maybe a little too cautious of like, well, that's not going to sell, or what if it
Yeah.
offends, or what if it, like sort of walking on eggshells in that situation. And I'm guessing you're not writing anything that's like the most controversial uh, kids book in the world of any sort, but like I imagine there is probably just in publishing worlds like there are certain subjects like I mentioned on here before many a times that one of my favorite books that I saw that sort of crossed into a new world was one that was about war in a picture
Oh, wow.
and like that's not something that most publishers are going to touch on a regular basis if it's too real,
Yeah.
at least for
Yeah.
a picture book range.
Yeah. And you're correct. My books are not that controversial. My first book coming out is I Like Your Chutzpah.
Yeah.
So, and it's Yiddish words. And it's very me. It's just me from this point of view, from this from my Jewish upbringing. So I definitely think there's that. And I think traditionally for books from you know the Jewish community and other communities, like if people, I think folks in the publishing world just think Hanukkah, like that's
Yep.
the only moment, and they have a hard time like being creative about like all the other opportunities that could be out there. So it was just about finding the right people that saw my vision. But I mean, I cried. Like there were times I was at home, like crying, not because I couldn't find a home for it or I couldn't find an agent for it, but because I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. Because you asked about like taking the risk. I didn't know if it was the right thing for me to be doing. And I think it was like every 6 months, my husband and I would have I'd have a nice cry and he'd just sit there and be like, he's like my biggest cheerleader. And everybody everybody needs a cheerleader like that, especially when you're trying something that feels risky. Because I think for a lot of us as artists, the risk is, it's an emotional risk. It's vulnerability. It's like putting yourself out there. And he just kept, you know, telling me like, yes, like I believe in you and you need to keep following this. So, and I think it turns out that the more risk you take and the greater the payoff, because once we got it in the right hands, it was fantastic. And it's the project's been going really well, and it's been great, and it's been a really important project for me to be able to do and to bring that voice, you know, to kids, not just kids that haven't seen themselves in the way that I wanted to see myself as a kid. So I wanted to give that to them, but also to other, like to build bridges between communities.
Yeah.
So that there are folks that if they don't have a Jewish friend or they don't know somebody that's Jewish, that they can see, like, they're like, oh my gosh, like I use the term schlep, like that's happens to be Yiddish, or, you know, so just building those bridges between communities and people.
I've said many times, and I think it crosses boundaries. But one of the things I say when I'm at work and there's problems is that 99% of those are just communication errors.
Absolutely.
And I feel like
we talk about that a lot in our house.
It's not that people have like wildly different ideas. It's that they don't know how to express their ideas to the person next to them who might have different ideas, but they don't know how to express it in a way that is thought-provoking or is not confrontational or whatnot. And so like having something like this, you know, a book that potentially, and I get the idea of like the visibility side of it. I get the idea of some of those, but just something that's like trying to break down very complex ideas of identity into a sort of a palatable conversation, I guess, a visual conversation for
that's
audience.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, Mark.
That's younger or whatnot. And then no matter what side of the spectrum or political or religious divide that you're on, it's a matter of just like, can you take a moment and talk and learn how to communicate better? And hopefully that, you know, solves some of that issue. It won't solve everything, but
right. Can you be my PR person?
No. But I mean, like, and what I like about it.
That was really beautifully said. I mean, that was really beautifully said.
I want to make sure I don't step on toes of any sort too. It's like I'm trying to figure out like how to convey ideas without like, and knowing me, I've put my foot in my mouth too many times in my life. I don't want to say something the wrong way, or could come across the wrong way. But I do think that that idea of like communication is so big, and that's why picture books are really great, and especially books that relay things that not everybody are knowledgeable about. Like there's a book, a person I used to work with, Carrie Feynman, I can't remember how to say her last name, but wrote a book called Don't Hug Doug. And it's about a kid who basically doesn't want to be hugged. Like he has social boundaries that he wants to maintain. And like, it's one of those things that like most people, you think about that, like when we were growing up, and I know I fell prey to it as well, of like being like, you know, oh, can you hug that person to your kid? And like, that's not always the right thing to do. And just like having a book that actually breaks that down for people and lets them understand that, or communicates to them that what's comfortable to you is not comfortable to the next person is such a smart idea. And I imagine that like, even though it may be a fairly simple concept of the chutzpah book, that it's still getting that idea across to people that like it's more than I love the phrase, it's more than Hanukkah, that you had mentioned, like that you can't be somehow defined by a holiday.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I mean, and one of the things I love about picture books too, children's books, is that you've got the parents there with their kids. So it's like this moment where you can get information to adults as well. So, I mean, because I know that that was like one time, you know, you hope if that kids have those moments with their parents where they're reading them books. I know not every child has that in their household, but it's great when you can get the adults as well. Um,
Do you,
but yeah, but
do
go
you
ahead.
do you write them with the intention of like crossing that boundary, or is it just by sort of happenstance that adults connect with them?
It's always on my mind. Hold on, I feel like it's hard to see what I'm doing because I've got like my colors under my colors. I'm gonna get a blank piece
It's
of paper. I'm like,
mine,
what am I
mine looks
doing?
like a mess until about like 2 hours in, and then all of a sudden it starts to take shape. Right now, it's literally me just gluing down some color. So it's
Um, so I feel like I've always loved being around kids. When I was little, I wanted to be a teacher, and any opportunity I would have to do like some sort of like teaching assistantship as like a teenager or something, or like camp thing or whatever, like camp
yeah,
counselor, like, I always wanted to be around kids. So I never felt like I always felt like I was learning from them. I never Kids are so intelligent, and I never felt like I needed to talk down to them. So I guess I do always have the parents in mind, but I think mainly I just always want to do books that honor how smart kids are.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Wait, can you see what I just want to make sure everybody can see what I'm working on.
I think so. I mean, it's in the lower left corner, but I think so.
Can I pull
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Does this
yeah. No, I can see
better?
it. I can see it. I can see it. It's
Um,
once you moved your hand, I was like, there it is. So
okay. So, but I've been really fortunate on this series. I'm working with an editor who's really awesome and willing and excited to go there and just like make a book that's like slightly untraditional for the age group we're working with, which is super duper exciting. So the next book that we're working on is a book about Shabbat. And for those of you out there that don't celebrate Shabbat or know what it is, it's basically a rest day at the end of the week. And in Judaism, there's more like religious stuff around it. But I grew up it starts Friday night and ends Saturday night at sundown. And I grew up every Friday night. My grandparents lived in our hometown. We would go to my grandparents' house for dinner. And I just remember I have these memories of my dad. He'd come in from the office and we'd meet him there. And as soon as we got in the elevator to go up to my grandparents' apartment, like I just remember as a young kid, I could see my dad relaxing. Like I could see like work kind of shaking off of him.
yeah,
And so I carried that with me. Um, and when I went through I mean, I will help back up for a minute. When I was a teenager, I hated it because, you know, it was Friday night and I wanted to go do things with my friends.
yeah.
And I think my parents were pretty strict about us going to my grandparents every Friday night for like, I think until I graduated high
And
school. I'm now thankful that they did
was
that.
Shabbat the one
Uh,
where you're not supposed to use electricity?
Correct.
Okay,
Like that's the
which is
most orthodox side of
which
it.
is
Um,
another thing that like add on if you were a kid, a teenager, throw in on top
yeah,
of that like you can't use your phone
yeah.
or
We didn't practice
yeah,
that then, but we do now. So
yeah,
what happened was like as I got older, I went through when the kids were little, I went through a divorce and I needed something. I was basically single momming it and my illustration career just started and I needed something to help me just focus on them at the end of the week. The week felt so busy and I was so tired. So I went back to Shabbat and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do this. You know, I should do Shabbat again. So my Shabbat, what I did was on Friday nights, it's when, are you familiar with Clone Wars?
wait, the
The
Star
animated
Wars?
series? Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So
That was just out of left field
it
for
was
me. I
totally
was
out of
like,
left field. So Clone Wars had started on Cartoon Network, and it was on Friday nights. It was before streaming, and it was on every Friday night. And my boys loved it. So I would get pizza, and we would sit on the floor in front of the TV set, and we'd watch Clone Wars, and we'd all hang out. It was so much fun, and that was my Shabbat.
yeah,
Um, and then so that started like kind of like these fun Friday night dinners. And then I continued those, like fast forward, I got remarried, I have blended family. COVID hits and our weeks, again, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, like every day was blending together. So I said to my husband at one point, I'm like, what if we tried like a more like specific practice of Shabbat? And he's like, okay, he's not Jewish, but he's like, he was game. He's like, sure, let's try it. So what we started doing is like actually like, okay, Friday night, we're gonna stop working at 6 and we're gonna make a nice dinner. Like that's how we started it. And then we went through another transition where things felt super busy and we were having a hard time connecting as a family. So then my husband and I decided, we did not put this on the kids, but we decided that we weren't going to use screens from Friday night at 6 to Saturdays at noon. We're off of all of our screens, which has been amazing. Sometimes it's really weird and hard, but it's really great. So Shabbat has really like served me well in my adult life as a tool to be like very intentional about when I'm being on and when I'm off and when I'm just like chilling out and relaxing. And it's a gift at the end of the week to say like, I'm ending the work week, I'm starting the weekend, I'm with my family, we're all here together, we're all healthy, like let's enjoy each other. So that is the theme of the book that we're doing, the Shabbat book. And that's another huge gift for me because it's not out there for the Jewish community, but it's not super religious. It's more about like, we just talked a lot about like, what can we give to the next generation? Like, what do we want to talk to them about for themselves, as they live in these busy worlds. And I do think Shabbat's like a beautiful part of the Jewish religion. And there's just a lot of ways you can celebrate it. And
outside of even the religious side of it,
right.
I mean, it sounds like it's
right.
a good healthy practice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the turning off the thinker for a bit and relaxing and sort of what do I want to say, like reflecting on all that you have, whether it be a big family, a small family, friends, that kind of like, to me, that extends outside of the religious aspect. And some people may call it something else, but that, to me, that is like a universal language that the book could probably solve for more than just even a singular community.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And the thing I like about it too is that like we all go through different times in our lives where things are harder than others. And it's just, I talk to my kids about this a lot too. It's like important to have different tools in your tool belt to be able to work through those times. And it's hard to get those tools when you're like in that moment. Like you need to be kind of looking at them while you're doing well. Like while things are good, it's like, work on them then so you have them when things are a little bit harder or trickier.
So let me ask you, this is just the pragmatic part of me coming through. If you have a deadline, what do you do? Is that factored into it? Is that something that you would address with, clientele?
Yeah.
If you
I have to say that the thing that's caught us most off guard is we've had a couple situations where we've had family like text us, and because we're all so used to being on our phones and everything, something important, and we're like, oh gosh, we have to figure out like an emergency system where like everybody knows we're not on phones for almost 24 hours, that they know like what to do if they can't get a hold of us. But yeah, in terms of work, there's always something I have to do every weekend. Like I think that's part of being a small business owner. Both of my sets of grandparents had small businesses, and I remember hearing from my parents who worked in their small businesses and from my grandparents that they always worked on weekends. So I know that there's always going to be something I'm going to have to do over the weekend, like whether it's like an inventory list or a to-do list. All the sexy stuff, right? Or balance my QuickBooks or something, just so I know it's like, good for the next week. But I try to do that like on Sundays. And if there is a big deadline and this has happened, I just make sure like you talked about communication earlier, make sure I have really good communication with my partner, with my husband, so that I'm like, babe, I'm really sorry. Like I I uphold Shabbat to the most. Like, this is our time together as a family, but I really think I'm going to have to work on Saturday and Sunday. And we just kind of check in with each other because we've made that, that's like, that's sort of a promise we've made to each other that we're going to give each other that time, no matter how busy it
Yeah.
is. That's important for the relationship. So
It's like the idea. Oh, my wife I just noticed, she said, could you move your piece up just a little bit more or tilt the camera down a little bit? Because
so up this way?
let me see. Hold on a second. It takes a second for the delay on the feed. Yes, better.
Better?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it had shifted down or.
Yeah.
But that idea of like having to manage expectations of like,
Yeah.
I am someone who used to always work on, nights and weekends and all that kind of stuff. And I've tried to make a habit out of limiting how much that happens. And it's, there's going to be times where deadlines hit and you just have no choice.
Right.
But I found myself at a certain point, because of how many book contracts I had or whatnot, that all of a sudden I was working weekends every single day, and it just felt kind of a bit obnoxious. Let's put it that way. At points. And I needed to sort of check myself and say like, okay, weekends are just kind of off limits.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that knowing that like that could make a contract not happen, or you might be pushing a deadline, but at the same time I think it's a mental state. It's a healthy factor to sort of like set parameters, knowing that you'll have to break them here and there, but hold somewhat true to them, or as close as you can without necessarily like breaking every other weekend kind of thing.
I have a couple of mantras. I have a mantra that is like well, first of all, the stuff on the to-do, like there's always going to be stuff on the to-do list, like always, and it will always get done. And then everything's manageable.
Yep. And
so I kind of try to like, if I'm in a space where I'm going into the weekend and I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna like do this week? There's so much to get done. I'm like, just remember, like there's always going to be more, like there's going to be more stuff to add on Monday and then Tuesday. Like it's okay to just like step away, and because part of that is, I think, culturally too, we're just driven to have so many things we need to get done. I've also learned like where I can let things go. Like, do I really need to like vacuum the house? Maybe, or maybe not. Like maybe it's a weekend where everything's just dirty. Like maybe there's dirty clothes and dirty house and not a lot of groceries. But if we're all hanging out, enjoying each other's company, like great,
And now that your son's home, you have
we've instituted some stuff. It's great.
That idea of like sort of negotiating with yourself, and I think as a sort of self-employed freelance artist, it is hard to step away and say like, I need to, I don't have to get everything done exactly on time, or I can take a break, because you don't have someone else over your shoulder telling you it's break time, or go take lunch, or any of those things. That it's hard to sort of give that to yourself, because you're always sort of under the gun of sorts. But
do you find though, like when you do step away, that you're much better when you come back? Like when you give yourself that time to step away, that when you come back to something, like you're clear and kind of like, do you ever get that sense?
I mean, my big like time for reflection, and this probably doesn't sound as glamorous, but is when I'm driving home from teaching. I got about an hour in the car to like just think, or to plan, or those kinds of things. And so like, to me, that's the time wherein there's a lot of, thinking back on the day, or like, oh, I got to remember to do this thing, or whatever it may be. And it's not, I literally can't do it because I'm driving. I can't go pick it up at the moment and go like, oh, I got to go send in that form right now. Like that's not going to happen because I'm in a car. And so to me, that's one of those spots where I do love the like the sort of mental organization. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my stuff's super glamorous too. My big thing right now, I'm sort of obsessed with solitaire, like with cards, like actually with cards. And it's been so now on Friday nights when I'm not on my phone, I'm like in bed with my deck of cards playing solitaire. And then I also, it's kind of new for me. I'm reading. I never I have dyslexia, so reading is it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
But I decided this year, it's not tricky, it's just it's really tiring. But it's really great to read good stories and see how the words are put together, especially if you're somebody who likes, does writing as well, like, like we do. So I just kind of I told myself, like, you don't have to read a lot as long as you're trying. Like, that's the most. I had to give myself like a parent pep talk. Like, as long as you're doing some of it, that's enough for you. So do like a chapter. I'm reading Game of Thrones. Well, I got through the first book. I'm reading the second book. So I just do a chapter every week, and I do my solitaire, and it really helps just kind of bring me down after a week of creating. And then by Saturday morning, like, I don't even really want to do anything. Like, I'm just really happy hanging out, like, especially now that it's summer, like going outside for breakfast, just sitting outside, having a long breakfast, like taking my time. It's really nice. But I do need, like, I had to find the things that help me sort of come off a super creative week.
Yeah.
Or super like problem solving week. Like you said, like, I feel like a lot of my creativity is very much like problem solving, and my brain is firing on, a lot of pistons. So
Yeah, you need to cool the engines.
yeah,
like otherwise
that.
you burn out. These are all horrible metaphors I'm throwing out here, but it's
No, it's a good one.
I'm of the same boat. Like, I have I'm a word game and puzzle game person, and so like every day I do those at the end of the night. My wife gets angry because I do them like when I should be sleeping, or it's a little obsessive. Let's put it that way. But to me, those are relaxing, and it's sort of like it resets. This sounds kind of like hokey here, but I do think that it sort of resets my brain in a way. It's just a different type of thinking that I don't normally do during the day. And so that little reset is enough to get me to sort of like ready for the next day, or I feel better when I get those puzzles done. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there must be I do word puzzle. I do words with friends. And there must be something about that kind of problem solving that helps, that's like similar to what we do but different, because I feel the same way too. Like, it kind of like helps my brain sort of ease down,
there's like
slow down.
My problem is there's about 6 or 7 different like apps that I use that it's, like I said, it's a bit obsessive that I have to do all of them every day, or else I feel kind of like, oh no, I missed one. It's like having a streak on Duolingo. Of that sort of thing. But but I don't know. It's to me, it's like I look at it and go, well, if I do it, it's making me sharper over time.
Yeah.
I've learned how words work better because of some of the apps. Like, if this is going to be that structure of letters, then I know that it's followed by something like this. And if I can find that in the puzzle, then I've solved this. And it just goes on and on.
Yeah. So cool. I love it. So, yeah, I like seeing that stuff too. It's really fun. So I don't know if I helped answer the question for people about like the balance of like work and life and making and like the amount of products I do, but I think it's just a combination of a lot of things, and also I think just like life experience and like choices. I mean, one thing I'm really big on too is I feel like everything's a choice that we do. It's something I had to learn that the really hard way, as I think most of us do. Like, I felt like a lot of stuff was happening to me, and I'm like, well, I actually have a choice. Like, I'm making these choices. I'm choosing to take on this project, be with this person, or whatever it is. So I try to like it doesn't take as much work now, but I remember like years ago when I was trying to work that muscle and I'm like, okay, so that didn't like that nobody made me do that. Like I chose to spend the time on that project and therefore, I could have had a conversation with the client and said, we're over our budgeted time and therefore if you want me to do more, then you're gonna have to pay me more. But I didn't, so this is on me at this point. So just kind of like a lot of learning like that through experience, through making mistakes, stuff like that.
So,
And then I've had some
oh,
bigger life.
go ahead. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say that I've had some bigger life experiences that I think we all do. By the time you hit a certain age, you've been through some stuff that I think pushes you to do certain things, or so.
I do think that there's a threshold, and there's that idea of like the midlife crisis. I feel like there should be an art version of that, a art life crisis or mid art crisis,
I like that.
wherein like what you thought you should be doing and what you really want to do are two different things.
Yeah.
And once you start to understand the power of giving yourself the freedom to live in that world of like what you actually want to do, that to me is that like that shift of moving towards that, like, the realization that you're no longer a kid, that you're an adult now, or you're, that again, that midlife crisis thing of like, you start to reflect on what does it all mean and where am I going to be 10 years from now, and will I look back on my career and go, well, I just spent however many years doing something that wasn't really me, or wasn't the challenge that I wanted it to be. I saw earlier on in the comments, someone asked a question about sort of style, which is a big loaded question that always shows up on here.
Style.
And I've been trying to use the word voice more and more as I go along, instead of style, because I think style is kind of loaded in its interpretation, or people see that word and think one thing versus something else. And I'm wondering, and similar to what the person was asking, and I don't remember who asked it, I'd have to scroll way back up there, but sort of how did you come to how you make? Where did that come from? I mean, obviously, like, there's a design sense that shows up, and the background that you talked about sort of coming into play, but are there other factors? Are there people that you were looking at? Are there things that sort of you try to challenge yourself with visually to get a new approach?
Yeah.
How does
So
style play in? Let's put that.
Yeah, inspired wise, I mean, I definitely think about like the household I grew up in. My mom was really into like the house was, she really loved, I would say like 60s kind of modern design, like lots of teak furniture. My dad is from Chicago. He grew up in Chicago, and they would go visit my grandparents there before my grandparents moved to be near us in Pennsylvania. And she went to some of the very first Crate and Barrel, she told me. And the reason that I didn't know this, but the reason they're called Crate and Barrel is because they actually, like, they would get the products in from like Scandinavia, and they would actually put it out on the crates and the barrels that the goods came in on. So she would go there, they'd visit like Chicago like once a year, and she would buy Marimekko fabric on a bolt at this Crate and Barrel that was kind of this very like, sounds kind of like hippie, like cool, mid-century Danish kind of new store in Chicago, and they had Marimekko fabric. So growing up, she had like a couple of, she loves to sew, and she had a couple of Marimekko tablecloths. So like whenever we had company over, we would help her set the table, and I remember putting the Marimekko tablecloths out. So I was like around a lot of those prints. And then she had a lot of like more, I would say kind of like folk stuff around. I grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, where Penn State University is located.
Okay.
And they have this really amazing arts festival every year. I think it's like the biggest one the biggest arts festival in Pennsylvania. And there'd be just like amazing artists from all over the country would come, and they'd have music and funnel cakes and, you name it, it was there. So every year we would go. They also had a children's fair that I was part of. I'm kind of going on like a long conversation here, but for the children's fair, you had to apply to be in it. And my dad built us like little stands for our objects d'art that we sold. Mine happened to be like pom-pom critters with googly eyes. I'm not sure how much money I made, but I love doing it. I probably spent more on supplies than that. So but these artists would come from all over, and my mom and dad really loved the art. And there was like a lot of like really folk art that they would buy, whether it was like, you know, ceramics or paintings. So our house was like this combination of like real tactile artwork and then also the mid-century stuff. So that definitely influenced. I always loved my mom, like stuff, the art my mom liked. She also liked the Modern Art Museum in DC, and we used to go down to Washington DC every holiday season to see family, and we would go to the Smithsonian's and to the Modern Art Museum. So that definitely influenced me. I grew up during a time, I think, when we didn't have as much TV, or we got books from the library because there was no Amazon. So it was like really specific what I was looking for as a kid. And it was like Maurice Sendak was a huge one, and Shel Silverstein for me. So that definitely like influenced my visual and storytelling world. And then as I got older, I fell in love with some Japanese artists. Like I found my way to that. And
is there anybody in particular that's like the wild card in your influence?
I don't know if it's a wild card, but I'm just if people are watching, I'm just sort of making a puzzle, and I just switched out the face. I wanted to do something where I like cut it up and colored each one differently, because I haven't done anything like this in a long time. So I just made the cat kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when I still have my scrapbook. So we used to get the newspaper every day, and on Sundays, Mark, you're probably, I think, a little younger than me maybe, but I don't know did you get the Sunday comics that were in color?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would cut out the Snoopy comic, the Peanuts comic, and I would tape it into a scrapbook, and I would draw Snoopy over and over again, which if you look at my work, it's like everything has a big head and a small body. I remember laughing one day looking at my work, because I'm like, oh my God, it's like all from like a childhood of drawing Peanuts characters. And I just love Snoopy. I did in fourth grade, we had something called an interest fair, and I picked Charles Schultz, and I wrote to him, and he wrote me back. Oh. I still have the letter. So I was like really, really into the Peanuts. So it's not a wild card, but it's definitely like a very like important line from like childhood to my style now. I think I'm trying to think if there's a wild card. I would say the one that gets like, I think the least people know is the Kroft Brothers stuff. I was really, really into a show called Lidsville.
I've heard of Lidsville. I've never seen. I mean, obviously, like H and stuff is like pretty common for.
Yes.
But...
Yeah, I didn't get into HR Puffin stuff until later, because it wasn't syndicated where I grew up. But we had Lidsville, and we had Land of the Lost, which wasn't quite like I love Land of the Lost, but I'm much more of a Lidsville person. And I loved, there's a show we also got called The Thunderbirds, which are marionette puppets. Like, love that. I turned my kids onto that. We're like a huge family of Thunderbirds fans. And that, I guess I don't know what the line is directly to my style, but there's something about this like simplicity of the visual that you're looking at, but there's something like much bigger behind it that I really love. Like, you know, when you're watching Thunderbirds, like these are puppets, but they like sweat, and they put them in these, you know, dioramas and these little sets that are like just beautiful. They're amazing. The clothing's amazing. So it's like you kind of buy into this world, and you realize like, wait, they're puppets, but it's much more complicated than that. I think that's sort of how my brain breaks things down. Like, it wants to be simple, but always like the story behind it. So I like that you talk, like, it's not really a style per se. I mean, I do draw the way that I draw. My brain also really likes to break things down into shapes. Like, I look at something and I automatically just see shapes.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, that's that designer background in you too, that like shows up of I feel like people that cross that boundary start to look at shape. Or the reason I asked about like the outliers is oftentimes there's things that we reference that we don't know why it shows up, or like
Mm.
me, I really, really love folk art.
I
But like,
yeah.
I mean, you have one of the Tate things, like that idea of like found objects and
Right.
untrained artists. Like, to me, that is like, if I could do that for my career, if I could somehow like shut off the training that's been ingrained in me and do that, that'd be amazing. But I also know that that's not like always feasible, and so that voice thing comes in of like, what am I trying to say with my work versus what do I want my work to look like?
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to say is like that it doesn't have to be precious and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. I
And
love.
it's there's all sorts of things, and I can see all the influences that you're talking about. I have this weird connection to Charles Schultz that I'm not sure. I mean, he was a Minnesota person to begin with, but my best friend in elementary through high school, his dad supposedly grew up on the same street as Charles Schultz, and
What?
hung out with a lot of little kids in the neighborhood.
Oh my God.
And there is a theory out there that they may have been the sort of like,
The gang.
yes, the
Aw.
all, and like, I mean, that could be just a tall tale told from
I'm
from
sure that I'm sure he was influenced by the group he hung out with. I
yeah.
can't imagine he wouldn't be. Yeah. That's really cool.
Is there I'm seeing I see people saying Snoopy too. Yeah, as long as you don't do the Red Baron in showing up in your work, and like you don't have the
You don't think
the
that's
gimmicks. Every
yeah.
every image you draw is someone holding a football
Right.
and then pulling it out at the last second.
Yeah.
The what was I gonna say? There was something about there's something you mentioned. Oh, one of the things that you mentioned in there, and it just caught me off guard, and I wanted to get back to it. Was you said something about like that when you started out, you had to spend more on supplies, or more money going out than coming in, kind of
Yes.
situation. Does that hold true today? Because I still feel like I'm putting more money into my artwork than, I mean, not technically, but I just, on a daily basis, I feel like I'm always like investing more than potentially what I get out of it.
Well, I don't think that artists get paid enough for what they do.
Okay.
That could be part of it. That's another conversation. That's something I'm trying to like constantly educate my clients about, not just for myself, but for like the next generation and everybody coming after us. Because I think there's, I mean, I feel like we're like the last line on the budget. Like, oh yeah, wait, that poster, we need to put something on it that we're going to use to market our product. Wait a second, we've got, $200 left. So there's that. But yeah, I do think it's like, it's really easy for me to invest in it because I love it so much. So it's not like always the wisest business move. Because I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, I want to do that because it'll help me connect with people, or it just feels really exciting, or it's going to push me into a new place. So I feel like it's such an easy place for me to like kind of not look at the dollars and be like, what's the like the more important thing I'm getting out of this? How am I? Yeah, art is just such a great way to be able to connect with people. So generally, I feel like I am still investing more of my own time or money. But maybe everybody feels like that in every career. I don't know.
I mean, I assume that everybody feels like they're putting it, like, to go to someone and say like you're an auto mechanic and you need to put in more time. And I don't think it's a fair statement across the board, but I do think that idea of like the investment isn't always a financial one. The investment isn't always a as linear
Right.
as we think it is, and it's okay to like. This is gonna sound pretty sort of specific, but I feel like when I started out, there was a real problem in my head of how much money I spent on supplies and how much time I put into my artwork, And then at the end of the year, tax season hits, and you look back
Right.
and you go, wow, I did all of this, and what do I have to show for it? And I think the challenge for me has always been, well, those numbers don't equate on paper, but am I willing to step back and say, and you know, they're better now, obviously, but if, am I willing to, or how do I put this? Can I wrap my head around the idea that the numbers are not the important thing? And
Yeah. Yeah.
the heart of it is like sometimes you have to put out some money or some effort with no visible benefit, knowing that down the line it will pay off. You know, it's an investment in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we have the I would say like the gift of being able to execute a vision. And so sometimes you just need to put the time into executing that. Like there are a lot of people that have ideas. I've been around so many amazing people that have great ideas, but they can't themselves like execute it visually. So it's hard for them to sell it to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like to
I mean,
to get it to the next point where they can actually, whether it's something they want to do to help people or to just like make a new product, they themselves don't have the tools to communicate that. I think it's like a real gift to be able to have the tools to like put a pitch together, to not only know what you want to say, but put the pitch together and get it out there. So yeah, that does take a lot of time, and it's not really, you don't see the payoff right away. And I do think that artists don't always get paid what their value is.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I even, this is I don't think my agents are watching right now, but I got an email from one of my agents, because I have an art agent and a literary agent. And the art agent wrote me the other day saying one of the clients that I've worked with in the past has changed their payment structure for the type of work that I was doing, and they are not going to offer as much for that type of work anymore in the future. And it was like, do you still want to do it? And it's like, it's already not great pay. And then on top of that, you tell me now, like, they're not even going to pay that. It does hurt and sting a little bit, because it's not like I'm doing any less work.
Right.
Like you're asking me to take a pay cut, and you're asking me to take a pay cut on stuff I haven't even done.
Yeah.
Or like you're not offering me, which is even more strange. But at the same time, I like doing them.
Yeah.
And it is money. It's not like it's bad money, but it's not great money.
Right.
But it's like, am I just supposed to like, I don't know what the correct, I mean, I'm willing to do it. I enjoy doing it, and therefore I'm willing to do it. But like, there's part of me that goes like, how dare they ask that in the first place? Like,
yeah.
But
yeah,
it's all, I mean, to be honest, the business of illustration is a strange beast at best.
But it really is. I think I've been trying to talk a little bit more openly about the pay thing, because talk about as you like hit middle age and you start thinking about things, like I really want to know that we're leaving like the next generation with some tools to like advocate for themselves. I know there's been like a lot of conversation about AI. But I feel like, and it's important, but I feel like along with that, we also need to be talking about like, well, what jobs are we going to have, and how much do we get paid for them? If AI, how do we advocate for that stuff? Because if we do it consistently, if we get as many people to do it as consistently as possible, we have a better chance of like passing that information along. But if it's just like one person here and there, or people are doing stuff for free because they're worried about, like, they just want to get an in with something like that, it can help, it can elevate everybody, or it can like kind of keep us where we're at. So
one of the challenges I have every year is talking to the students about sort of like, there's that whole, and I don't think it's as much of a problem as it once was, but that like exposure argument.
Yeah.
And I think that enough people in the world have heard that the backlash against that I don't see as that happening to students as much as it once did.
Yeah.
But talking to them about the value of their artwork, and
Yeah.
one of the ones that always surprises me is when they come to me and say, like, someone wants to buy my piece, how much should I charge them for it? And then to hear what they think is
Yeah.
not, or what they think is the right price versus what it should be, is always so shocking to me. How much
Yeah.
they undervalue
Yeah.
their work. And I understand they're a student and they're still learning, but like, I mean, they're some of them, it's like below minimum wage if you figure
Yeah.
out hours, and it's like, why do you do that to yourself?
Yeah. There's are you familiar with Jessica Hish's Dark Art of Pricing guide?
I don't
Oh,
know that one.
it's amazing. You should give it to all of your students and anybody out there that's wondering about pricing. It's probably like 4 years old now. It is so great. And for young people, it like shows them like how to break out their cost of living so they know how much to charge, like so they can see why they're charging as much as they're charging.
Yeah.
And then she also has everything broken out by like size of your client. Like, is it a mom and pop shop or is it like a big corporation and they're asking to buy, like, do they need it for a year? Is it in perpetuity or like it's so great. And she has like charts to show you and it's awesome.
It sounds a lot like the Graphic Artist Guild's.
It is similar to that, but like slightly more specific for illustrators.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. And then she has I love it at the end. She's like a whole chapter about like the idea of like trading for like what you're like for social media points. Like, hey, if you give us this, then you'll get all this exposure. But it's like really like doesn't like buy you groceries at the end of the day.
I imagine you must get a lot of not exposure talk, but the like, will you be a brand ambassador for us? I mean, I get those every once in a while, but I can imagine with your aesthetic and whatnot that you probably get that more than your average.
I think the biggest shift, and I'm curious how you feel about this, that I feel like has been, I'm trying to figure out how to work with my clients on it, is that, we've all gained so many more roles over the years in our jobs. Like we're all doing a lot more things.
Yeah.
And this idea that, if I do a product, like basically that I'm responsible for like a whole bunch of the marketing launch part of it. Right. Yeah. So like taking photos of the products because I a lot of times take better lifestyle photos than my clients. So like, and that I need to do, write copy and like all this stuff. And my agent helps me with that and whatnot. And sometimes the clients, like we can kind of find a way to work together on it. But I feel like it's an expectation now that like, if we're going to work with you, you're going to do all these things to help launch it. And I'm like, whoa, that's a marketing job. Like I can do it and I do it, but it's like, it's a lot of extra hours to put into a project after you finished it.
My agent actually flagged some of that recently in a contract. And it's not like they're asking for the world. It's not like they're saying you have to do everything under the sun, but it's just like, that's not my job. Or one of the things that I've seen and heard a lot about is the pressure from publishers to what do I want to say, like, to rely on the social media of the artist to a point wherein it's like you have these followers, we need to use that. And so it becomes this like, you are our marketing team, and it's not fair.
It's not, and it's not a realistic way to get products sold. Like you need somebody, like they need to be working that. We all know how social media is and how finicky it is. Yeah. So even, with me and however many followers I have, like that doesn't mean that I'm getting to all those people. So it needs to be a team effort, and it needs to be well thought out. Yeah. By people who know how to do that stuff. Yeah. Like know the algorithms, know how to place ads, like all that good stuff. It's also just
a time thing. Like,
absolutely.
You're writing, like, I mean, they put in the contract stuff, like I would have stuff post it on certain dates and blah 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 blah. And my agent Nick sat and just said he will post when he wants to, and he will promote it, but we're not going to like put this down in contract that he has to do all this stuff.
Yeah, that's.
But I also like, you know, they put that on you, and then all of a sudden it's like you have only so many hours in the day that you have to be working on your next project,
Right.
and there is no financial reward. I mean, to be honest, like doing the social media thing, like in picture books, people think like, oh, you'll get all these royalties from it and whatnot. Like, not from a post on social media. That's not where book sales come from.
No, it has to be a whole, very holistic.
Yeah, it's wholesale. It's not small little individual things. And so like this idea that somehow you have to use your following to solve their problem is challenging at best.
Yeah. And I think it's because they're in the same position, similar to us, where they're now doing all this stuff. Their marketing teams have been cut. Like everybody's lost employees. Like, well, I don't know if everyone's lost them, but things have shifted again since COVID, and people are doing a lot of people are doing more than just their jobs. So they're like, it seems like an easy solution, but like you said, it's not really a solution. It's just like kind of passing it along. Yeah.
Which is, I understand. Yes, everybody is strapped financially and time-wise and whatnot. It just, is it worth it on my end to put my time and effort into that? It's not.
No.
And I think most of those locations know, or most of those companies know that is not where they're going to see the sales. But it's an easy thing to at least try to negotiate, or at least put in the contract for them, in hopes that someone goes, yep, I'll do all that.
Yeah.
Now, those are the bummer sides of all this. But what is the like? I feel like part of this Gab Doodle series, I should just have like vent hour, and it's everybody gets to like just spout off about whatever they are having problems with. But what is the fun part for you? What's the thing that like outweighs any of that struggle?
Okay, so much like the joy of connecting with community, of like potentially touching somebody else, like making somebody who felt lonely or unseen feel seen. Like that's amazing when those moments happen, or when somebody communicates that. And I love working with kids. Like anytime I get a chance to be in a space with kids, I love teaching, and I love teaching kids. I keep changing it. I there's like a lot to love. I love it's really fun doing intergenerational classes where you've got kids and adults, because kids are they're so much fun to be around. They just say what's on their mind. I love how unpredictable they are, because things just go in like so many different directions when I'm working with kids. And it's always, no matter what the direction is, it's always fun and wonderful. And I always learn something about myself and creativity in them. And so then to have other adults experience that too and be like, oh my God, that was so much fun, is like it's just pure joy. I love being around a whole group of kids. It's like the best.
Well, especially like getting, and I think there's a threshold, like when you're a parent you get to see it, but there's also this added pressure of like you have to worry about cleaning up things.
They're kids.
You have to worry about like maintaining control, but in certain situations, like watching kids and how they think is totally fascinating. I mean, have you done school visits?
Yeah,
like that's where you get to really have some like fascinating interactions of kids spouting off things that you just never would expect, or are sort of weird and esoteric, just because that's how kids operate. And to me, that's like one of the best places to interact with them. Now, do they stay on task all the time? No, but still totally fun to be in that environment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm doing a snail that's skateboarding.
Oh,
This
cool.
is, I don't even, like, I'm watching you do this cat, and I'm like, one of the things that got me inspired here is I'm going to do lots of interesting textures, and like, I don't even know if it's going to be graffiti or whatnot around this,
Oh, cool.
but
Yeah, I love it.
I'm trying to figure out the snail helmet at best here. Well, how do you decide? Because it sounds to me like a lot of the projects that you work on are also sort of self-driven in the sense of like
Definitely.
maybe a little less like art director oversight at the beginning, at least, or in the idea phase.
Yeah.
How do you come up with what is a viable project and what is just an inkling of an idea that, maybe later down the line becomes something? um like, how do you differentiate what's going to work and what's not going to work?
Um, I just kind of, I've always sort of had this personality where I just go for it. Like I don't, I think it's partly my dyslexia. Like I don't like having to read a user's manual. I don't like, I like to just kind of jump in and try stuff. So I just, I talk about the play thing a lot. Like I just try to make sure I keep space to play.
Yeah.
Um, and, and I had a wise woman tell me once, my old agent, that people are like will connect with your joy. And I mean, I think people connect with um, any emotion that's like coming really from yourself. So like if I can get myself in a place where I'm creating things that make me happy and make other people happy, I know that one day they will be something. The path's not always super clear to me. Um, but it will come up in other ways. And it's really, I think that attitude has served me well because I've definitely pitched a lot. I pitched a lot of stuff, and it doesn't always, most of the time it doesn't find a home. And my sense with that is it's okay because it's leading me to that thing that will find a home. It's like not always about the end product, it's more about the process.
Yeah.
Because I love process. So I love coming up with ideas and trying things. And then, like once a year, I come up with something that's like, oh my God, that's a thing that's going to sell. And we have to get this in the right hands. But it's a lot of trying other things.
Do you feel like
So, I
you've
mean,
gotten better at predicting what is going to work?
yeah, I, I definitely, I think I have a better gauge of that now. But I also like to do things that are kind of weird or off the beaten path. So it's like, I think like letting that kind of happen as well, so that maybe it's something that shouldn't be in the market, but it actually ends up in the market. And then it's like something new that people haven't seen
Yeah.
before. So kind of a little bit of both. I've definitely gotten better at predicting, but basically I just try to play as much as possible. Like just try to like let my brain do what it's comfortable with and what it enjoys, and let it take off in that space. And then like kind of circling back to the beginning, like surrounding myself with people that really know me and I trust, and like having those conversations. Like, so if they see something like, oh my God, that's such a great idea, like you have to keep going with that, then I will. Or if they're like, I don't really get it, and I'm like, okay, well, let me explain it to you. And if they're like, still don't get it, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll just like put this aside till like it's like more baked in my head, or I've had more time to like look at it and play with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. It's, I mean, it's always everybody's process. Like, that makes sense to me. I know there's probably some people that are going like, "What are you talking about?" But it there's always an interesting sort of like threshold for what is going to work and what isn't going to work in people's heads, and oftentimes it's also just time and patience with
Yeah.
it. Like, it's the imposter syndrome, the uh, what have you, that shows up in the art making process of, this doesn't look good, this doesn't look good, and then all of a sudden it does look good because you've just
Yeah.
given it enough time, or you've
Yeah.
you've let it breathe,
Yeah.
essentially. And I think that level of trust and that level of understanding that that's going to take time, takes potentially years, or longer, depending on the person, to figure out sort of like how to judge what is going to work, what isn't going to work, when to say I need to move on, when to,
Yeah.
All those variables. Let's put it that way. But
yeah, I've always been pretty good, I think, just generally in my life. Like, it's just part of my personality that I don't take things personally. And nothing, you talked about like the idea of like things being precious earlier in the conversation. Like, nothing ever feels that precious that I can't get feedback on it and maybe like rework it into something that makes more sense. Because I mean, I would say that everything I've done that's been successful it's always a team effort. It's always because like maybe I had the idea and I'm executing it, but I've had like a great editor, a great art director, someone, on that end of things that believed in it and that they were, helping kind of hone it for the audience we were talking about, but always like working with really great people that help make it something, something maybe more viable for the market. And if it's somebody that I am in cahoots with to do something, I put my trust in them, and I'm open to their feedback. Like I want to learn, and I want to make it the best thing possible. So I think that's been a really important part of my success and my process too. Is just really trusting the people I'm working with, that they have the audiences, like they're looking out for the audience, they're looking out for the project, and that I can put my trust in them too. Like I don't have to hold on so tight to my idea. It's not just my idea. Once somebody signs a contract and they're paying me money, like they have ownership too.
they have a little bit of say in that situation.
Yeah. And I feel like I've been really fortunate to work with like just amazing people that have helped make me better over time.
Are there projects that you look back on in the past and realize that maybe it wasn't the right fit for you? That
Or maybe it was too. I have a lot where I'm like, oh, it was a little too soon. Like I wish if I could redo that now, like I think I'd have a clear idea of what I would want to do with it.
What do you mean by that?
Do you have that too? Like I was just young in my career, and I didn't like quite have my hand down yet and my like vision. So I'm like, oh, if I could get my hands, like if I could do this now, like it would just be like, it would be different and maybe better.
Okay.
Just because I know more now,
Yeah.
like I know I'm more confident with who I am and with how I come to ideas and whatnot. But wait, what was your question?
Projects, think like you looking back at them go like, this wasn't for me. That was the prompt.
No, I don't think I have I'm trying to think. I have some, yeah, no, I don't think so. I had one project in my time when I was with my artist agent before, and there's kind of like a before and middle and now. There's like with my artist agent, because she's the one that launched my illustration career. And then the middle time was I was on my own without an agent for about 4 or 5 years. And then with Kathleen the past couple of years. So those are kind of like the time periods I think of them. And when I was with my agent, there was one project I walked away from because it didn't feel like the client really, they weren't on board with me. And we'd gone through several sketch reviews, and I just they wanted more and they wanted more, and they'd hired me seeing my portfolio of work. Yeah. So I thought they wanted me. So I was kind of vibing that there's something going on in the meetings that I'm, not a part of, that there are people that aren't sure I can do this. Like, that's kind of the feeling. So I just, I think I was nice about it. I was like, hey, I think with my art director, I want to like have a hard conversation, but I feel like, maybe you believe in my work, but I feel like we're getting pushed back from other people. And I'm concerned at this point that we're not gonna be able to move the project forward. And she said, yeah, there's some people that, cause they kept wanting to see like more samples and different versions. And I'm like, what, like, this has never happened on a project before. Usually we like get the brief and there's a certain process, and, you know, I was like, what? So, and she's like, yeah. And so I called my agent. I'm like, I think I should pull the plug. Like, we should pull the plug on this, because I don't think I'll ever be able to execute it in the way that they want me to, because they have something else in their head. I'm not sure why they came to me, but so we did. It's the only time that's happened, but it was a good lesson, because I don't think I can say I don't have any projects that I shouldn't have done, because I think I will have those conversations with a client before I'll move forward, to make sure we're all, you know, on the same page.
I had an editorial gig ages ago. I will not name the client, nor do I think that I would ever get work from them again anyways. But they hired me, and it was for a magazine that was primarily like tech investment side of things. And the best way I can put this, they said, hey, we want to get you for this project. We have this cover for a magazine. Here's the brief. And they gave me this brief, and I did some sketches that was like these heads made out of words, and there were certain words they wanted to be part of the piece. And so I did this sketch, and it had this head with these words embedded in it, and the head was
cool.
out of them and whatnot. Look great, what have you. Then the art director came back and said, well, this is maybe a little too literal for the audience. I'm like, what? How's it too literal? And he goes, well, you know, the idea of this head, it looks too like, it doesn't look like a human's head. It looks like just a generic weird head. And I was like, okay, so I'll make it more human-like. And then they came back and they said, well, I don't think they'll understand why the words are inside the head. And it's like, okay. And so I did some other variations, and eventually it came down to the final piece was really just a bunch of words stacked, and that was it. And it's like, why did you hire me? Like, it was the same thing of like, if you're looking for someone who is going to do, and at the time I was doing not like super avant-garde editorial stuff, but like editorial stuff in general is concept. And then you tell me that your clientele don't understand concept. Like, why was I brought on this project? And I finished the project because I had the contract to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just, it seemed very weird to me that everything I did was, they won't get this, they won't get this, they won't get this. And it's like, are you underselling the client that you're doing or two in the process? It was a very strange thing. And that was the only time that I can think back to, like, I don't know if it was the right decision to tackle that.
Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes you can tell that stuff up front in like early conversations, and sometimes you can't, if it's gonna go one way or another. But yeah, I do find that interesting, because that, you know, someone can see your portfolio of work, but they're like trying to kind of push you into something different. Especially as you mentioned, like, you come from graphic design. You have graphic design background. Is that
I have a master's in visual design.
Okay.
I was illustration undergrad.
Okay, I'm graphic design like through and through for my undergrad and graduate school. I didn't come into illustration until later. So I feel like with graphic design, you definitely are a little bit more of a chameleon. Like, your name isn't on the project, right? It's not like graphic. I mean, well, for my books, they put I love that they put the graphic design, but a lot of times, like, you're behind the scenes. So when you're hiring a graphic designer, it can be that's the kind of feedback I remember getting as a graphic designer, is what you're talking about. And that's kind of what was happening in this other situation for me as well. Whereas with an illustrator, it's like you have a certain point of view and style, and usually people are coming to you for that.
Yeah.
And so when they don't want it, it's like, well, I'm not sure. Like, you might want to go to someone else, because this is kind of what I do. So, which is different than pushed in a new direction, which is, you know, that's like a different good thing. And I think we all know when that's happening.
It seems like it would be a headache for them. Just like, rather work with someone who is like more in line with, and maybe it's not by choice. Maybe they like have a certain budget, and they, you know, who they really want is this, or who knows what their reasoning is. But it just seems to me like if you did a little more research,
Yeah,
maybe it would be easier on both of us.
absolutely.
Okay, this is again great corner. We need to. I'm trying to figure out. Let's lighten the mood. Um,
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to get
uh,
off soon. So I don't know if there
okay.
are questions that anybody's like dying to ask me, any
Yeah.
specifics or
So Annie Making does say here, just wondering if you two are working on work projects or just fun projects. And I know that both of us are kind of working on just sort of fun things, but you want to explain, because you explained to me at the beginning what you were
okay.
sort of attempting to do. And
Yeah,
I don't
so
know as everybody knows at this point.
yeah.
It'd be good to inform.
So I always have, let me see if it's on camera. My camera. I always have like little things around, like toys and objects. So, I was talking about the solitaire stuff earlier. So I've had like these little, I was gonna make a deck of cards today, but I didn't. I had some thoughts. So I was like pulling out, I always have these around me to think of like ideas of things that I want to be doing. And I've had this little game out. Can you see that?
Uh, yes.
So
Yeah.
I think this is from when I was about 7 years old. And I love the illustrations; they're so awesome. And I would take it on road trips, and I think you're trying to get this woman to some point. There's instructions on the back. You can see the instructions right here. So you're trying to get her from down there to up in the corner. Um, and I was thinking about like how much I love these, and how it would be fun to do. Like these are each little individuals. Like what if I take a character that basically taking it's like a puzzle, right? Taking the idea of a puzzle, like drawing a character and then cutting it in pieces, and then taking each piece individually and decorating it or illustrating on it, whatever you want to call it, so that not knowing what that piece is. So then when you reassemble it, it's more of a surprise. It's just a way to kind of loosen up, because I think, when I sit and draw a character, I know like the eyes should look this way and the face should look that way. But if I don't know what each piece is and I'm just coloring, like what does it end up looking like at the end? So that's like a way for me to both play and think about like product development, and games and classes with kids and classes with adults. And what if these were cards that you sent, like each one of these, once a week you send somebody a little piece of it, and at the end they've got like this nice puzzle. Like could be a lot of things. So it's like a way for me to, it's just how my brain is. Like I like to find ways to keep it loose. I love cutting paper, and I love looking at products for inspiration.
I do see a question here, and I think this is a good one. First of all, Amy Jane Obasek. Yes, it's going to be a snail on a skateboard. So Denise Plant says, looking for representation. Any suggestions? Now, since you had an art agent, so like between us, there's been I have an art agent. You had an art agent. You have a licensing agent. Now I have a literary agent. And your licensing agent, do they do anything other than just licensing?
She's my literary agent as well.
Oh, she is. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's both. What is there a difference in the amount that they take between literary and licensing?
Yeah. Literary takes less than licensing because licensing products are out for a shorter amount of time.
There's no back end.
Right. So we have two different contracts. We have one for publishing and one for licensing.
Okay.
In terms of advice, so my I feel like should I flip my camera around and I can talk before. Okay, let me see if I can manage this. Hold on. Sorry to like spin it around.
Here, I'll do the same for a bit. We can. I gotta remember how to do this. There we go.
For all of you out there, I realized I gave my dad my camera stand, so I've got like with Mark's advice, like jerry rigged this kind of wackadoodle thing that my phone is on. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get my camera stand. I'm like, wait, I think when my dad was here last time, I like let him use it, and I'm like, you keep it, and then I was living in Massachusetts. My kids were little. Had been doing graphic design freelance for like when I had kids. I stepped away from corporate graphic design world. I'd worked at Adidas America in Portland, Oregon, and I just started doing freelance at that point. So we moved to Massachusetts, and my closest friend, when she was being represented by Lila Rogers, and my friend Lisa was like, "Hey, Lila's having this class for the artist, for her all of her local artists to learn about surface design, because before it was like right when surface design was starting.
Yeah.
Editorial was dying because of the internet, and she was looking like smartly, trying to look for new ways to get her artist work. So I was like, Lisa, I don't know, like I haven't taken a class in a long time, and it's gonna be with artists, and I'm a graphic designer, and the kids, like, I don't have a babysitter for the kids, and we just moved here and we're in a temporary house. And I like all the excuses. And she's like, oh, it'll be fun. So long story short, I took the class. It was a lot of fun. The artists were all wonderful. Everyone was so nice and so supportive. And I took to the surface design stuff really quickly because of my graphic design background. We were doing a lot of collections. Like she would give us all an assignment and be like, okay, so for next week, I want you to do like a holiday collection, and there needs to be wrapping paper and gift tote and blah, blah, blah. And some artists actually struggled with that more than I did because it was a brief, like it was a very specific brief. But as a graphic designer, I was like, give me a brief and I am happy. I that.
Out of clarification, I don't know if you said this, but this was the Make Art That Sells?
Yeah, she was this was before she was doing that online. She just used to have her artists over to teach classes because she did teaching, I think, before she had the agency.
Yeah.
So I did that class and I did another class. And at the end of the two classes, she asked me if I ever thought of doing illustration as a career and being represented. And I was like, no, I hadn't. And she's like, well, I can help you out. I can help like you build your portfolio. So that's where I started from. So it was sort of like kismet, fate, luck, and my talent, and I like to think, just like all these things kind of converging at one time. So I didn't fall into it as like it was something that I was going to do. Like I wasn't out to look for an agent. At the same time, I'd worked for a graphic designer at that point for at least, oh my God, at least 15 years. So I had a creative background. Like I knew how to talk to clients. I knew how to execute a project. I knew how to take a concept from like beginning, middle to end. Like I had a lot of other things that I had built up professionally that I know now are like a huge attribute to what I do. I don't think I knew that then. So I would say, aside from your drawing skills, really important to know how like the business of what you're doing, like how like sending emails, setting up schedules for your clients to make sure a project. I'm a firm believer in schedules. Like it's like to me, it's like the backbone of every healthy project is a schedule that has what you're responsible for and what the client's responsible for, both ends of it. So just like kind of having a firm understanding of who you want to be as a professional, because you're entering the world of like professional illustration, and you don't want to be looking for an agent and then get stuck in a position where you don't know how to work with your clients, because that's going to be purely on you. So make sure you have some good experience working professionally with clients, and make sure that I wouldn't say make sure. I would highly suggest that you get in a position where you can interview several different agents to make sure they're a good fit for you. Like just as much as they're interviewing you, like this is somebody that you're going to be interacting with a lot, that you want to feel comfortable asking a lot of questions, that you want to make sure that they know who you are. Because if it's like dating, if you don't want to be with somebody that doesn't get you, or they're not going to have like, they're not going to know how to sell your art, basically, if they don't
work for you technically.
Yeah. So, and then just gonna work really hard, but you're gonna love it. And it's like, it's a lot at the beginning. I mean, it's still a lot of work, but I remember, like, again, like the first 3 years, I was essentially a single mom, and I would get the kids from school and put them, like, have my afternoon with them, put them to bed, and then from like 8 until midnight, like every single day. I would work when they were in school, and then I'd work again at night. It was just, in the beginning, it was a lot of work to kind of not just prove myself, but like figure out my style and really be competitive in that arena for myself. And this is outside of the agent, but build community, reach out to your peers, and find people that are going through what you're going through for support, and that will like help you. Like if you had a bad day or a good day, well, like you can talk to them. Look, you can contact people like Mark or myself. I'm gonna I have people who reach out to me, and if I have time, I will definitely.
Yeah.
I always tell people reach out if I have time. I will definitely say like, yeah, I think you're on the right track, or I don't have time right now, but you can go through my consulting thing. Like it's just reach out to people and build your community, because it's more than just having I think some people think they're going to get an agent and it's like that's it, like you have a career, but you really need to have a creative community to learn who you are, to understand what other people are doing. And it's going to be hard. I think it's getting harder. I think it's getting harder for agents to do what they do because of social media. A lot of us can do what we need to do without agents. So I think artist agencies are suffering from that. So it might be harder to get in. So don't be discouraged. Like just, if whatever feedback you get, use that to catapult you to the next place. Like use the feedback to learn from it. If they don't give you feedback, if you just don't hear from somebody after an interview or after an email, just say like, hey, not sure, like, did you get my stuff? Or what did you think if it was an interview, just say, I just want to follow up. And if this is a no-go, like I'd love some feedback. Like don't be afraid to ask for feedback, because that will help you learn.
And
My kids, like with anything, like I know it's not easy these days to get feedback from people, but it's after you let your ego kind of feel what it needs to feel about stuff, like try to find out what you would need to do in the future.
I would add into the equation a couple of things, which would be generally it's easier to get an agent if you have previous work, just because it shows, like you said, the proof of concept. But there are ways to do it without, and it's showing that you understand. I mean, they're really looking to make sure that you're reliable. They're looking to see you. I mean, obviously style is part of it, and that's going to be probably a hefty part of it. But they're looking to see that you have longevity, and that you are someone that they can go out and put their weight behind. In front of clientele. But I agree with you 100% that it's not you have one and you're done. That it's an easy road for anybody. I mean, the other thing I would throw out there is, if an agent says no, unless they outright just say no, most of the time they're looking for, like, if they give you advice, hey, you should change this, you should change this, you should change that, etc. That's almost an invitation to prove to them that you're willing to adapt and understand what they're looking for and come back to them. And agents aren't for everybody. However, the literary world, if you want to be with some of the major publishers, generally you need an agent to get in the door. But that doesn't mean that you have to have an agent. There are other ways to get through that, especially as just an illustrator. If you're an author, you generally need some sort of agent to get you in the door.
Can I chime in for a second?
Yeah.
If you have an agent, get a lawyer that can read your contracts, because especially book contracts, there's a lot of language and there's a lot of stuff that you need a lawyer to help you understand, to make sure you're protecting your creative rights. They're not written with the artist in mind. They're written with the publishing house in mind. And I mean, that kind of goes for every project. If it's a really big project that's pay like an hourly rate for a lawyer. That's where the community helps, if you can find someone who's helped other creative people and kind of understands how creative folks operate and what kind of wait, I just blanked. What are we talking about?
The
Contracts we tend to look at.
And get used to, like, you can start to spot, but you need, especially at the beginning, you need someone to help you understand, like, what's actually being asked of you, what are the deliverables, like, what, especially when it gets into royalties and like sales remainders and things like that. That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't want to keep you forever. There is one. I just want to make sure this isn't. Yeah. Okay. That we sort of covered it there. I absolutely appreciate you taking the time. This has been a pleasure to chat with you and to converse. And it's so funny how much, like, I don't think I've ever had someone on where I'm like having a I don't want to say a dilemma, but like that we don't understand each other. And it's always fascinating how connected and how relatable all of these things are that we're going through as artists, and our sort of cross boundaries of different areas of illustration and what have you. But on top of that, just how sort of universal the friendliness is that goes along with being in this illustration world, and in particular the kid side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. You said that at one point, like, I'm throwing you under the bus here that you can contact. Like, no, that's part of this thing. Like, that's kind of why I'm in this game. Is I've realized through my life that I'm less about trying to be an artist and more about trying to be an educator as time goes on. Like, I enjoy this side of it, of chatting and talking things through and whatnot. And so, not that I want everybody to email me nonstop. But like, it doesn't hurt to reach out to people, and it doesn't hurt to ask these questions. And so I really appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was wonderful, and I'm so happy to be here and connect with you and everybody out there. And it was just so much fun. It definitely made my week.
And
so thank you.
Your camera worked?
It all worked.
Yeah.
I did it.
And now you got to hunt down your dad and say, wait. Remember that offer I said about that? Well, I will post what I'm done with here probably. I don't know when I'll post this, because I guess I'll try to post it before I go if I can. If not, if you post anything, tag me in it so I can see, because I've been watching on the screen, but it's not the same as like seeing the finished. So if you post anything, I would love to see it.
Okay.
So, and will you DM me the name of that book, the one about the pricing that you mentioned?
Yes. Hold on, let me write that down.
I won't remember it. I know it's something about the dark arts or something like that.
There are two things I always tell people about. It's that the dark art of pricing by Jessica Hish, and also Lisa Congdon has a class about organizing your time flow, and that's like I think is like spot on.
Too.
Yeah.
Lisa Congdon's one of those folks that like I don't even know like where I first found out about her, but she just pops up all the time in my feed.
Yeah.
You know, she is a superstar. And I know that I probably knew her from like when I was in school.
Yeah.
Honestly, back in the day, but it's one of those things where like she just shows up all the time and always has such a beautiful looking surrounding in all the pictures that I see. Like the student space always looks so wonderful. Like, I'm in a basement. I got a yellow curtain behind me.
I'm in my living room, so yeah.
All right. Well, go have a wonderful time. Survive this heat, and I will be in touch.
All right. Have a great trip to Ireland.
Thank you.
Bye, Mark.
Bye. And now it's the awkward looking for the off button. So folks, I'm going to stay on. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to switch my camera back down to my, let's do that real quick. Whoop. If I can get it. You get to see my ceiling for a second. Oh, it's classy looking ceiling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift, I'm going to keep working here because I always try to finish one of these. Let me zoom in a little bit so it's just on my desk. There we go. And people can ask me questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go along. And we will sort of entertain and chat and all the fun things that go along with that. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. So let's see. Fuzzy Little Mango says, how did you get to know Suzy? Well, honestly, a lot here. Suzy, I forgot that I had done a commissioned painting, a little thing for Suzy's husband that Suzy brought up. So we had been in touch prior, but have been sort of a fan of Suzy's for some time. And with these gabbing doodles, I and my wife, let's put it that way, primarily my wife, does a lot of reaching out to people and asks them if they are willing to be on gabbing doodle. And so sometimes, like in this case, I guess we had conversed a lot before through email and things of the sort, but I haven't actually like met Suzy in person. But some of the folks on here, and in fact, a majority of the folks that we have on Gabbing Doodle, I have not met before, and so it's the first time meeting in these situations. And so the conversation is a lot of like getting to know people, and that's sort of how this whole thing started. Was not necessarily a like, let's make a educational space for people to learn about Kidlit or to learn about illustration or things of the sort, but started out as more as a sort of like a chance for me to interact with people during the pandemic, wherein I wouldn't be getting out to environments where they would be as often. So it's a meet and greet most of the time. Now, some of the folks I do know previously, or I've met in situations wherein I've had the chance to talk with them on a much broader and bigger scale. But Fuzzy Little Mangoes says, thank you so much for doing this so transparently and honest. The info you shared is so on point. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't, it's funny you say that, like, transparent and honest. Like, I hope that there's no one else out there going like, I'm going to scam these people. Wait until they get a load of this. I'm going to trick them with this info. One of the things that Suzy brought up that I wanted to stress too, the idea of getting an agent is sort of oftentimes a scary and stressful situation for a lot of new artists trying to figure out sort of how to land one. And one of the things that I mentioned was that idea of like, it's easier when you have work, but if you don't have previous work, there are ways around that. The gatekeeping thing. Yeah, I got you. Shorty Love's-tale. That's as best I'm going to do. Thank you. I appreciate that. But one of the things that I suggest my students do often is if they're looking to get an agent and they have not had professional work, is to actually look at ways of showcasing how they make work, how they schedule things, and make a piece or make a section on their website or on their social media or something of the sort that showcases their knowledge of the professional world and the expectations there. And so, it's great if you have something where you say like, hey, this was published, because they know immediately that you worked with an art director or that you worked with clientele or things of that sort. But if you don't have that opportunity, there's a way to showcase that you understand it. And so having a section that's like a process section on your website is great. Having something that is an Instagram post that shows, here's my sketches that I would hand in, here's what I do for the finishes, here's how I lay out my calendar, all those. Shorty loves Tolly. Okay, there you go. Those kind of things are beneficial for said clientele to be able to look at and go like, oh, they understand what they're doing, and I have faith that they can sort of follow suit on any given project going forward in the future. And so to me, that's not that that's going to be the sole answer for like lack of previous work experience, but I do think it definitely will help. Let's put it that way. And so take the time and make those kind of like investments in showcasing your knowledge. I'll make this like maybe a fun little road that he's hopping down. I'll make some lines and like some pebbles and things. And then maybe some cool like some cool words. My wife chimes in, I could tell what it says. Well, great, Lauren. Charlie should get a cough drop, Lauren, if she's listening. We'll see. It's a question, do I want to do this? Do I want that little like bit of road that he's riding down? Gleaming the cube. Do I want that? I guess probably. Yeah, I probably need it. Let me trim this off right there. There we go. Okay. I love the tease, Mark. Yeah, you do. You like tease and you're a jerk about it. So, what kind of questions do people have? How can I help? If you don't have questions and I just got to talk about whatever I feel like talking about, I don't know if you want that. That might be good, that might be bad. I don't know if you want to hear the old inner workings of this ding dong. I tease you mercilessly. How dare you? So rude. You would say that. Let's see if I can get that. Oh, that's a good cut. I did it. I did it. I got the cut I needed. Why a snail on a skateboard? I wanted to draw a snail. Well, at least that's why I started sketching, was a snail. And then I'll show you what I drew. Hold on a second. Because there's a little sketch that goes with this. It's not a very good sketch, but there's a sketch. Give me 1 second. Let me just get this glued down before I forget. Okay. And here's why it's a snail on a skateboard. Because I started drawing snails, and then I like that shape. And that was a snail. And I was like, it's funny, he's got a little arch there. And so I put a second arch there. And I was like, that looks like a helmet. And then a little skateboard underneath, because snails can't go fast, and now a skateboard it can. That's it. No cool reasoning. It's just it seemed like a fun thing to do. That's my general MO in all of this. Is it seemed fun to do. Let me cut this down. There we go. This is the roadway underneath. It's an odd color palette, but it's okay. I like it. And I have to do lots and lots of other things to this, but we're only about halfway through this sucker, so there'll be a lot more going on. So stay with it. This is. I'll get that guy on there, and then I need to cut it. I cut this just because I don't want, not because of any special reason, but just literally it hangs off the edge and gets in the way. So I just trim it down while I'm at it. So let's see. Get this guy stuck down there good. Let's start putting some stuff on this snail. Let's give him some cheeks. Some rosy cheeks. There we go. Let's see. Do I want this one or do I want a different one? I'm trying to find the right tone of pink here. That's too dull. Now, this is technically Faber-Castell. This should be okay. I agree. Wait, rollers. Wait, look. Cooler skateboarding. Oh, this? My wife tried to do this poll the other day, and everybody thinks roller skating, but like I said, is roller skating in the Olympics? I don't think it is. And therefore, I think we have our answer right there, that one of them's cool enough to get into the Olympics and the other one is not. I mean, I like roller skating, don't get me wrong. It's cool and all, but is it comparable? I don't know. I don't remember a cool roller skating game on the PlayStation back in the day, but I do remember Tony Hawk Pro Skater, so, you know. I'm just saying, you know, it's not always just because it's got wheels that makes it cool. It's sometimes it needs more than that. Did I have some light out here? Oh, I did. Maybe I don't. Let me grab another scrap of white. I have little scraps of white here that I can use for things like eyeballs. A roller skating video could be fun. Roller derby should be in the Olympics. What was that? What's that movie that we watched, Lauren? That was about roller derby something or other. Shoot, what was it? It was a remake of a movie from back in the day. Thanks. Rollerball. There you go. Thank you. Are you saying because I talked about rollerblading roller skating and skateboarding that somehow I ruined your poll? For those who don't know, my wife's upstairs recording this, and so she chimes in every once in a while. Does he have a cough drop, Lauren? Yeah. Okay. It's all post-nasals. So what kind of questions we got, people? No one's asking questions. You gotta sit here and listen to me. Is anybody else underneath the heat dome? I'm trying to figure out if I want to do like weird flat eyes on this. Is that weird? Or do we like circle eyes? Okay, everybody chime in. Do we like, ooh, little teeth though. Maybe these just need to be smaller. Let's try those smaller. I like the idea of not doing a big round eye. I've been doing big round eyes a lot recently. I like the idea of like these weird sort of, I don't know, ovular. Who rolled down here? Oh, that's him. That's him, folks. What do you think? Should he have two little buck teeth?
Yeah. I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
Because why not? There are 9 people watching.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
I guess so. Depends on who they are. Like, are they cool and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
How's your printing going? My son got a
Good.
3D printer. He's been printing non-stop today.
I'm printing another one just now. I
what?
just started. It's a little fidget gun.
Whoa. You know you can't bring those on the plane, right?
Yeah, I know.
Ooh, I don't like those teeth like that. Those look funky. We'll cut we'll draw those in. We can draw those in. That's fine. We'll get those eyes in.
Yeah, it should be like long, like that long.
Well, they were angled the wrong direction was my issue.
And a little far apart, too. Because that would be better.
Okay, let's see. I see yours. So artist Gina Dasa. I'm a young artist from Sri Lanka. Can I know a few tips to make the community clients worldwide? Okay, so there's always this challenge of, how do you create a community outside of like your general area? And obviously, like if you have an artist community there, that's great. But if you're looking to break into a specific type of work, makes a difference. So like If you're a sculptor, you know, you might need a group that's into sculpting. I mean, in general, honestly, artists should be able to talk about artwork no matter what. And I don't buy. I've had folks that I've interacted with throughout the years that have had this mentality of like, how do I want to put this? Like, they, if it's not in their field, they don't want to talk about it. And I think that's stupid, because any good artist should be able to talk about anything art related, because it doesn't have to be like the specifics. Like if it's down to like, oh, you don't know a specific animation technique, okay, that's fine, great. You don't have to say that, but you can also talk about, is it just good movement, or is it, you know, is the concept a bad thing, or is it, you know, there's all sorts of ways. Anyways, getting to the sort of community side of things. There is, depending on what market you're in or what you're looking for, as far as a like type of artwork. If you're saying something like illustration, well, there's different organizations and things that relate to that you can get in touch with. So one of them in particular, like since I'm in the kidlit world, there's SCBWI, which is a Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and it's a group of folks that essentially have a organization that helps with learning how to write, how to illustrate, how to do all those fun things. And they have conferences, and they have workshops, and they have online community, sort of like community boards or bulletin boards and things of the sort that you can sort of rely on, and crit groups and things of that sort. If it is outside of that, there are other avenues. Like if it's just plain illustration, there is different organizations. Like basically, if you go search whatever type of illustration you want to do, it's out there. There is some group for it. There's students that I have that are really into natural science stuff, or things of that sort. And there is a guild for natural science. If you want to do concept art, there's a concept art society. And it's a matter of just doing a quick Google search and you'll find those kinds of things. Most of the time there is some sort of fee to be part of it, purely because they have newsletters and organizational needs to keep that sort of afloat, whether it be websites or things that of that nature. When it comes to the kidlit side of things, my experience has been that it's been a very, very friendly group, and it doesn't matter where you're from. That if you get involved with that, something like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, it is a worldwide organization. So there are chapters in every part of the world. And so if you go look, I'm sure that Sri Lanka is in one of those groupings. It may not mean that you can get together with them on a physical basis just because of the travel and things of the sort, but more than likely you can interact online without any hesitation whatsoever. Let's see, have a Millifolia _art says, have you ever worked in a children's illustration agency? Would you say it's worth it? Thank you. Now, I want to backtrack and say, worked in a illustration agent or have a children's illustration agent. So I have two agents. One is a art agent, one is a literary agent. The art agent primarily for me, and that's not common, I will tell you that. I had an art agent. I negotiated out of the kidlit side of things and into the kidlit thing with a kidlit agent. My kidlit agent only reps kidlit work, though. That's all that they rep. They don't rep anything outside of that. So any work that comes in that is not kidlit goes to my art agent. I like having an agent just because of my the way that I operate and teaching and things of the sort. Having someone that can deal with some of that on a regular basis for me and is helpful. But it's not for everybody. I like the aspect of having a second opinion or having a second set of eyes on what I'm doing, and making sure that, you know, I'm viable in said market. Let's put it that way. As far as the literary agent, there is a difference, and so everybody, here's what I'll do. I will walk you through. Literary agents and art agents take a different amount, and some make sense for some people and some make sense for others. Let's put it that way. A art agent generally takes around 30%, maybe upwards of 35, but shouldn't be doing more than that. If they're doing more than that, you should check it, because that's a awful big amount for them to be taking above that. But at 35%, or even let's say 30%, at that, they are generally getting a one-time flat fee for most of the work that you're getting. They're not getting royalties. They're not getting anything that is sort of continuous. Whereas a literary agent, a lot of that work is actually meant to be a long-term thing. If you get royalties, if you get anything of that sort, they will see some of that money. So like any book that I have right now that goes to royalties and earns out like that, the agent that signed that contract with me and produced the contract or helped to get that job is going to see a bit of my royalties from now to the end of time of those royalties coming in. Let's put it that way. And so they don't see as much on the front end, but potentially if they do the right contracts and the right book goes through, they could see money for long times. And so for long times, I didn't make it, for a long time. And therefore they're not as, they don't ask for as much up front. Licensing agent, I don't know as much about licensing agents. Suzy definitely knows more on that end. But that is also a sort of a one-time fee situation. And so that idea of what do I say, the long term on that probably is not as big because it sort of has a quicker turnaround. So if you go to something like Surtex, they're buying the rights generally for a certain time or a limited number of products. For those that know, Surtex is the surface and textile show that happens in New York, where a lot of surface designers and things of the sort go and sell their patterns or sell their surface designs to clientele, and they might buy the rights to your pattern for bedding, and the next person might buy the rights to do it for stationery. And so you can sell the rights either in individual parts like that or wholesale to a buyer. But oftentimes there's a limitation on the time in which they can use that. Let's see. Shorty loves Tolly. Can you talk about your experience with inspiration and encouragement from your kiddos? I find that my kids are consistently my biggest cheerleaders. I think my son's upstairs right now, and I don't know if he can hear this or not. So we'll be tactful in what I say. I think, especially starting out, when I was first getting into Kidlit, that my son was very, very into it. Let's put it that way. I think it was cool that his dad was doing this kind of thing. I think as time has gone on, it's less cool, or it's maybe not that it's less cool, but just like it's old hat now. And so it's lost some of its charm. And I'm not saying that he doesn't appreciate what I do, but I think that it's just like he's been around it long enough that his dad drawing for a living is not the new hip thing. All the kids in his class I've visited them enough that they all know that I do this. So it's not like you can use it as clout with his with his friends. As far as like inspiration goes, I don't know how much it happens anymore, but definitely when he was younger, when he would do little doodles and whatnot, I would keep those doodles. I have a little drawing here of a horse that he did. I don't know why it says Lauren Note paid 3.6 ounces, $4.10 and $13. But There's a little drawing of a horse that he did that sits in my studio here. And I love the sort of naive drawings of little kids. And so like having that there is just my reminder that like, I want to make sure that I maintain some of that childlike nature in some of the artwork. The inspiration, now that my son's older, comes more so in sort of other avenues that are not necessarily on the art side, but more so on sort of just other life things. But doing the school visits and things like that, getting to see other little kids' drawings, like one of the highlights is always getting a package in the mail from a school visit where the kids all draw drawings or write letters and that kind of stuff. Like that's really cool to see. That's one of the fun things. My wife just said, "Thank you folks for sharing comments and questions. Sometimes the viewers just watch silently." I'm Mark's wife and I help out with gabbing. I like that people watch silently, which they do. I just think it's funny that like that's thrown in there as a little that, and then like P.S. I'm his wife. There was another question here that how do you become a children's book illustrator? Practice, work, study. One of the big things that I found that especially not so much anymore, I'm really bad in this practice now, so don't trust me on this, but when I was starting out was a lot of just looking at picture books and knowing what's out there. I don't read them as much as I used to. Part of it is my own like what do I want to say, like I do not find that in my stressful times of work and studio and life and whatnot that I devote enough time to reading books anymore, and I should. I just don't. But that being said, getting out there and understanding what's on the scene, what books are coming out, who's producing them, who's editing them, understanding sort of what the market is like is a huge thing to sort of work on. And so the more that you can do that, the better. I used to, when my son was really little, we'd go to the library every week, if not more than that. And I would go, my son would be like, reading session or something like that with the librarian, and I would go sit at the new books section. They had a little cart that was all the new books that had just come in. And some of them were, not new, but new to the library. And I would sit in front of that. I would get down on the floor and I would just go through every single one of them. And the ones that I liked, I'd check out and bring home. And the ones I didn't would stay there on that lovely little cart. And so I would do that on a regular basis and got to understand a little bit about sort of what books were structured like, but also understand sort of what is coming out at the time. Now, I later learned that those books that are coming out, or the books that I'm seeing then, are not necessarily the books that are being bought that day, kind of thing. Like there's a delay that happens there, and you want to be ahead of the curve. And so sort of looking at those books and relying too much on what they look like can be a little bit problematic, because as a friend offered up the other day, it's about a 5-year cycle of when your idea comes to you, when you're able to get an agent or get that in front of people and get it out on submission, and then it getting bought, and then getting edited and produced and whatnot, and then being out on the shelves enough for them to have an understanding of like how the sales are and whatnot, takes about 5 years. And so it's not as simple as just saying like, oh, here's a book I saw that just came out this week, and so that's the new style. You got to be looking further out than that. And so part of me, this is maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but part of me says I don't want to spend too much time looking at the books that are out right now, because then maybe I'll get too caught up in my own head of saying I need to match what they're all doing, and I will be, potentially years behind in the type of book that that people want. I'm trying to clean this off because it gets so sticky and gross. So just extra glue. Okay, so Millfolia art. This is a good question. It's a question that's on the top of my mind, and it's a question that I've sort of been answering in a lot of different capacities throughout the last year. And the idea of AI art and how it affects Kidlit in particular. I don't think it affects Kidlit the same way that it does other industries. I think where AI art is going to be the big problem is not necessarily with publishers and things of that sort. Where I think it's going to be more of a challenge is when it gets into the world of like mom and pop shops. What I mean by that is sort of small independent stores and things of the sort where they would normally hire a local illustrator to deal with their images and whatnot. All of a sudden they're going to just say, oh, I can do it through AI. I don't have to pay anybody. Great. Then they're going to go hire those. Those are not the best paying jobs in general, but it also is a lot of the jobs that people get when they start out in a career in illustration. And so that's where it's going to be hard, is the entry point. I think it's going to be hard for a lot of folks to get out and get clientele and to get work that potentially is hard to come by at best. Where it really struggles, or where I see the struggle happening, is not no, okay, let me put it this way. I think there are industries within illustration that are going to be more affected when it comes to those mom and pop shops, obviously, but also I think the entertainment industry is probably going to get hit harder than something like the Kidlit realm. The Kidlit realm, one of the things it has as an advantage is it is a long form narrative, and because it's a long form narrative, that means that getting something that can actively illustrate a story over a series of images over time, have it all make sense, meet the publisher's demands, edits and all that kind of stuff, seems like it's going to be a little bit harder to come by than what you would get with something like sort of a cover image or something like that for a book. And so I don't see it as being this this immediate challenge to the world of Kidlit. That doesn't mean that it won't be over time, and I'm sure that probably, like, I'm going to regret saying that now in about like 3 days, just because of how fast stuff moves. But the other thing that I think is going to be helpful in the world of Kidlit in particular, that maybe is not as commonplace in all of the worlds of illustration, is publishers are pretty protective of their IP. And if you make something that has the potential to be a windfall for them later, you design a character or something of the sort, they want to own that for perpetuity. And so they are not going to, or at least my assumption is, they are not going to lean too heavy on the idea of buying any sort of work that is AI driven, purely because they will not own the copyright to it, as the way the copyright law works right now, based on some court cases that have been decided about AI art and who owns the images. Right now, if I remember correctly, there is no way to have a copyright on that artwork, and so therefore, what publisher wants to, jump on that bandwagon and say, "Great, I want a piece of that." So to me, I think that's another thing that's going to sort of be a challenge. I also think that just looking at the illustration industry in general, that there's enough folks that are understanding and realize that working with a computer and working with a actual artist, there is such a difference in collaboration and things of that sort, that I just don't see there being longevity in it. It's going to be around forever, but longevity in the sense of the working on a job with AI does not have the ability to again collaborate, to adjust to client needs, etc. And I just think it's going to struggle always in that realm. And then you have art directors who are really staying on top and understand that artists are important in this situation and don't want to just do a piece where it's sort of thoughtless, and they want to have illustrators in there because illustrators have a voice and have a vision for something. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers, but I just definitely think there's more to it than just, hey, this thing is scary. And I understand it's scary for a lot of people, and I understand the reasoning why. And I too am not super like happy about it, but I also don't think it's something that I need to like spend my days and nights worrying about right now. That there's so many other things on my plate that if I can, I'm gonna put my time and effort into those other things. If that makes any sense. That was very long-winded. I apologize. That was long-winded. Trying to figure out what I want to do with this. Like, do I want to have words that go like radical, pazzow? Yes, the question is about how do I do edits. Yes, I actually go in and do, if it's an edit that requires a big massive change, like some structural change, that's different. But if it's like a color correction I'll do digitally. That's easy enough to just go and say like, I'm gonna highlight something and tweak it in an app. If it is something that is more like you got to move this character's arm to the side, etc., that's most likely digital. But if it's something like this whole series of houses that are in the background are problematic because they're getting in the way of this thing, etc., then sometimes it means a repaint. There's been a couple of times where I've had to do that in my career. One of them, particularly, there was this thing that I did that was like all built around a certain color theme, and then they came back and said that that color theme doesn't work, and I had to go back and change it all, which was a pain, but you got to do what you got to do. When it comes to edits, most of the time I'm in Photoshop. Every once in a while I'll edits in Procreate, but it's not. It really just depends on sort of what the thing is. If it's a color thing, I do it in Photoshop. If it's a textural thing, if it's like a Band-Aid brush kind of deal, I'll do it with Photoshop. If it's something where it's like I need to get a drawn texture in, I will jump into Procreate. Let's see. Rad. I love me some chunky letters. Radical. Oh, look at that. The eye there. Oh, that's pretty good. I don't know if I can maintain that though. Let's see, say thank you, makes sense. I need hello, how are you? I know you're not gonna stay long, but hello. Let's see, I need an L. Bam, 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 bam. And I do like that I like that. Let's see if I do it like this. That's it. Oh, that R is clunky though right there. I do it like that. Radical. And then I gotta cut out holes and that kind of stuff, but okay. I think I can do that. So it just says radical for radical. What other kind of questions? Do you want more questions, or do you want to work in peace? No, I'm happy answering questions. Ask questions. If you got them, I'll answer them. If you got questions, I got the answers. Whether they're correct or not, it's a different story. But I got answers. Glue. I meant, I said tape. I meant glue. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how do I get this in here in a way it doesn't get too close to any of these other letters, but still lets you see that it's a C as it goes off the bottom edge. Oh, I need to cut this one out. It'd be smart if I did that first. Although maybe I don't. Maybe I just leave those like that. Yeah, I think I leave those like that. As long as they're legible. What do I think about first when creating my illustrations? The parents or the kids? I don't think about either. And what I mean by that is I think about what seems fun to me. And I'm under the assumption that two things. One, I'm an adult, barely, and I am also still a kid at heart. And as long as I can make something that I am happy with as a person, I think it will translate across the board. I think if I get too caught up in trying to worry about the audience, that I tend to overthink my work, and it becomes static. It becomes maybe a little too much about sort of like, how do I say, not necessarily that it isn't fun, but like I put too much pressure on me trying to please some unforeseen being when I can literally look at myself and go like, oh, this is fun to you. And so hopefully it you know what I mean? Like the client is right in front of me in a way if I just focus on what makes me happy. Now, is there times where I probably need to be more critical of my own stuff? Yeah, maybe, but I think my stuff's goofy enough that it will cross those barriers. I don't know. If my stuff was too serious, that would probably be a bigger issue of like, am I doing it for the kids or for me? But I think because I live in this world of sort of like silliness that adults can be silly too. It's not just the kids. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but it does to me while I'm saying it. There we go. Bumpy road, radical. I have sticky hands already. Okay, so let's get some other fun stuff in this. One. Let's get in here and let's draw some. I mean, I could draw in those holes. Yeah, we'll do that. Let's see. What else? What other questions we got? Very nice. Yes, makes sense. Have you read the book, The Creative Act? I have not. That's what he says too. Focus on creating the best possible art without thinking about pleasing the customer. Yeah, I mean, there's times where you probably want to focus on the customer here and there, but I think if you make yourself happy, so I had a teacher ages and ages ago that basically said just make work that makes you happy, because then you'll be better at going out there and selling it to people. And so like when you get out in the world, you'll be much better at going out and saying like, look at how cool this thing is, and look at how amazing my work is, and all these things like that. And so, and I agree with that in the sense of like, she used a cruder terminology, but that idea of you want to be happy with what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to go out there and undersell it. And so that makes sense to me. Now, I might just do like weird little like exos and like, not exos, but like fun little stars and things around this just to add some variety. The snail is just too boring right now. It needs more. I don't know if it's just textures and colors or if it's other things that need to happen there. He's feeling a little dull to me at the moment. I also think maybe what I need to do is grab that yellow that's there and put that yellow, do I have any scraps of it? There we go. Put that yellow into the hubs of these wheels. Come in here and do this. Okay. That's getting too big. Let's cut that down. Yes, boom. That's good. I like that. Just cut another one that size-ish. Go on this back one. Millifolia Art, thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. That one a little bit narrower. There we go. We can do that. Okay. Let's get this all glued up. Stick it down in there in the spot. This one glued up. Stick it down in there in the spot. Let's try that again. Let's get this glued up. Stick it down there in the spot. There we go. This is what I refer to as bookending colors. So, I'm going to have this yellow up here. I want to make it in a secondary spot. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I need to make it somewhere else on the piece. Can I skateboard, Mark? No, I cannot. I wanted to. I have a skateboard. I tried. It didn't work. It was sad. What was I saying? Oh, so if I'm going to have that yellow there, I want to make sure that it's in other locations. And the reason being is that then that one yellow doesn't look like it's a standout, sort of like sitting out there by itself and drawing too much attention. So just by choosing another location where it can sort of like live should help sort of create a little bit of a consistency in the color throughout the piece. So let's see, where are we time-wise? We're at 4:56. Okay. Rodrigo Bruno US? No, I'm not sure what Rodrigo Brunos says, what type of paper do you use? And I use, this is just tracing paper with acrylic gouache on it. Sometimes thin, sometimes thick, depending. And then I layer it, stack it, paint on it, do all those fun things. I'm trying to, like, I feel like he needs something like, oh, should he have a butt? Like, I feel like he's too boring right now. Maybe he doesn't need a lot, but it just feels a little boring. I also could go through and do some little, like, white lines, which probably would be good up here. Let's try that. It helps sell the shell. Whoa, that rhymed in a really cool way. Some extra lines. Let's see. Oh man, also I'm running out of energy. Becca Ed? No. Becaedd? Says, love your type, everything about your style I'm obsessed with. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes I'm obsessed with it, sometimes I'm not. I may actually keep this one kind of simple. Like, I thought about putting like tattoos or something on this guy, but I don't know if I need that. I think maybe it just needs to be relatively simple with some like maybe some little stars and lightning bolts and things like that to just sort of jazz up. Let me come here and do like keep the piece relatively simple. Is he grinding? Maybe a little tail. I thought about that, but I kind of, the thing is, I like the idea of just these like big arcs and the fact that it ends up smooth. Like I thought about, yes, I could have a little tail there, but like, I'll have to think about it as I go along. A band-aid on a scraped knot knee. Oh, a little like, yeah, a couple bruises might be good because I could reuse, could get some of that color in there and just make a couple little band-aids. I like the band-aid thing. I like to do band-aids. Then it hints the idea that he's not the best skater in the world either. Okay, let me get these little stars and whatnot in here. Let's see, it'll like, again. lightning bolts. Oh. This. What if the band-aids are on his shell? I feel like that might be kind of funnier than on him. What kind of star was that? Do that star kind of funky. Radical. I don't even know if the term radical is still radical. I bet you it's not. Back in my day. Okay, let's get a couple. Lightning bolt streaks that are coming off. Like that. Wait. I band-aid on a scraped knot knee. Yeah. Let's see. The question is, what color should the band-aids be? Because if I can make them maybe, I don't want to use that, but let's see, let me take these and I'm gonna see if I can make a little bit more of a brownish color to throw in here. There goes my son playing this old pan flute. Even though I asked him not to play it while I'm down here. Hint, 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 if he's listening. Because it carries down here quite a ways, and I'd be appreciative if he did not. I don't like that strip right there, but I will use something very similar. Let's see. So I like that color. I just don't like how much that strip was getting painted. There we go. Look at this. I don't even know what color this is. This is medium magenta. Medium magenta, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of, what is this one? Cadmium free yellow, light and black. The combination of those give me this color. And that'll be my band-aid color. I just gotta let it dry. Maybe I'll do a little magic called hair dryer. Okay, let's cut these out into some Band-Aids. Let's see. No, too long. Is that too small? That's the other question. Actually, it's not too small right there. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll make them look more Band-Aid-like as I stick them down. I wonder if I can get one that wraps around. Let's see, I need it probably to curve just a little. It looks like it goes up and over. It does like that. Looks like hot dogs. Sorry, I have it off the stage. There we go. Stick one down like that. Is it better to stick them on him? No, I like it on the. I think it's funnier that it's on the shell because it's the one thing that probably doesn't need Band-Aids. So off we go. Now we're gonna make them look more like Band-Aids with some other little details. There's a Band-Aid. I want this one to be smaller. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Wait a second. I just realized Ivy A. Fowler. I don't know if you're on right now, but are you the same Ivy Fowler from Montserrat? If so, hello. I am. Hey. It was the A that was throwing me. How are things? How's life on the outside? How's the world of the world treating you? That's a weird statement right there. How's the world of the world? I'm gonna do one more that's kind of creeping up out of the corner there. Outside is hot. Yeah, there you go. We I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a group of folks that from your year that I've noticed a lot more. I don't know if it's the algorithm, or I don't know where it's coming from, but I've noticed quite a few from your time at school that have popped up in my feed recently, and sort of all of a sudden I'm like, oh yes, people that I not necessarily forgot about, but that I haven't talked to in a long time. When did you graduate? Remind me when you graduated. What year? You were pre-pandemic, right? By a ways. I remember. I mean, not like by a ways. Not like you're 95 and you've been out there in the big bad world forever. But I imagine it was a couple 2030. Yeah. Okay, there you go. I was gonna say it had to have been quite a few years before that. Let's see. Okay, now I got gotta do little. Gotta find the right color for this though. I don't want this to be too dark. I don't want it to be too light. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out like what color should I. That's actually not too bad, but the idea of little. Dots on those. Okay, I can get away with that. Yeah, a long time ago. It does feel like ages. I mean, I feel like there's students that graduated a couple years back where I'm like, I don't, this is going to sound horrible, but I don't even remember who they are, but I remember you. I remember your crowd. What's funny is I'm like, one of the things that I remember specifically from your graduating class is like the, some of the like auction stuff and interacting with people in the auction. It was back when it was like a big affair. Now I haven't been to it in years because it's a smaller run thing. Oh, I got so much glue sticking to me now. All right, I need this yellow can work. Yeah, they like reduced them down for a while, and they're sort of building them back up. This is for those that don't know what we're talking about. Montserrat College of Art has an auction every year, and it used to be this huge, like it got bigger and bigger every year, and then eventually it started to get almost too cumbersome, and then they pulled it back a little bit, and in pulling it back, it got really small, and now it's starting to edge its way back up and get a little bit bigger again. The challenge is that the it dropped down quite dramatically, and now it's taking some time to get up back to the level that it once was. But there we go. Oh, that's an even better color for these little preparations. Use band-aids, and then I'll even put maybe some little scars that stick out underneath these. We could probably wrap this one. And where's that white that I had? I had a good, no, that's the big one. Another small one here somewhere in this mess. I did. If I don't, I'll grab a different one. I'll just put a little hint at that little pad that's underneath the band-aid right there. What's this? This one dead? Oh, there we go. Each one of these will have that little pad right there. There we go. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Do 5 across. Until a certain point, and I can drop it down. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is pretty boring. 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4. There you go. Band-aids. I'm gonna actually use this color to darken in some of these other little spots here too. So it's not just showing up in again in those one instances which we don't want because then it looks odd. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. One, two, three, four, 5. There we go. 1, 2. Band-aids, band-aids, band-aids. Yeah, 1, 2. Almost there.
Sorry.
What happened? I don't know if people heard my son say, sorry. I got an echo upstairs. It was fun.
I made Noodle bark.
Oh, what'd you make her bark with? Okay, now let's get some little, maybe, I'm trying to think of, like, what color do I want to do to make that feel like they're maybe a little bit of a wound underneath. I guess I could just do, like, some road rash. So it looks a little banged up. And then what I might do, just because I'm not feeling the yellow that is on top of, or the white that's on top of that, I might actually come in and do a little on top of this. Just tone it down just a touch. It's more yellow than it is white. But I put that there. It is. It's still there, but it's just reduced down. I don't need it to be as strong. That's a little bit there. Just trying to every little chunk of that. There we go. Then, if I'm careful and I get my white paint with my brush, I'll get in there and that's too much water on my brush. Make those little pads underneath the band-aids. There we go. And la 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 la. Dee 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 dee. Let's see. Any last little touches I want to do on this? We're about 5:30. We're getting good on time. The question is, do I want to do little stars and lightning bolts up here too? Lauren? you think I should do little stars and whatnot up top? Up top, 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 top. What? I just don't know if it's going to be too much. I feel like I don't know if it needs it.
I like that wheel. It looks like the dot of the eye.
Mm-hmm. I know, once I saw that, I'm keeping that. Whoa, there's an echo going on. Right. That may be good. I don't know if I need to do stars up there. It might distract from the top of it. Okay, we'll call it at that. We will call it right there. This sucker is done. No more. No need to finesse it. Vanessa from Cosby Show. Is there any other Vanessas I can think of? That may be the only one. Ivy, yes, thank you for joining me. Yeah, anytime you want, I'm here Thursdays. However, not for the next couple Thursdays because I'll be overseas. But if you ever want to hop on and chat, feel free. I'd be more than happy to chat and sort of converse about any old thing. Otherwise, go have a lovely hot day out there in the world. I'm going to go upstairs from my studio, and it's going to be about 10 degrees more upstairs. I'm not looking forward to that. So that's it for the day, folks. Here's my sketch. That's all I have for a sketch right there. And it turned into this for whatever reason. So I will be back on, I have to do the math here. We're coming back on the 20th of July. And so the next Thursday after that is the 26th? 25th. There you go, the 25th at 2 o'clock. I will be back on, and do we know who the guest is, Lauren? Fiona Woodcock. There we go. The great Fiona Woodcock. Yes, we have some stellar folks coming up in July, and so I will have to, while I'm overseas, I will make an ad and all that kind of stuff for that, so everybody will understand who we got coming up. In the meantime, I'll probably post some stuff from afar, but otherwise, tune in next week. Not tune in next week. That was a dumb statement because that's not what I meant to say. Tune in when you tune in. I might do some live stuff from afar, but I don't know if that's gonna work out. Otherwise, y'all have a lovely evening, and I will be in touch. See you later. Bye bye. Oh, let me get this up a little higher here so it's out of the. It just says radical. Because radical's radical. Do I have this? Is this nice and clean on the other side? No, it's not. Is that nice and clean on the other side? No, it's not. Here, I'll do this, just so I get a nice clean shot. Hold on. This I have a pad of drawing paper specifically for this purpose. I'm going to go rip off a page, rip out a page, one or the other, and I'm going to go set it underneath this so you get a nice clean shot so you can see the colors. I kind of dig the colors of this one. It does have orangey colors in it, which I'm not always big on, but I kind of like the oranges. So that's it for the week. Y'all have a lovely evening, and I will be in touch. Bye.